This is the final event before the big tour finals, and 7 players have already banked their spots. But who will get the final ticket to Toronto? It's going to be must-win today for Nepomniachtchi, Anish, Giri, and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, not only to have a chance to go to Toronto, but to make it to the grand final in the AI Cup.
Magnus Carlsen's going to mop up everything. He's going to take everything with check.
Oh my goodness, that's a move for you right there.
I think this is the craziest position I think we've seen on the tour this season. He might...
Oh my god! A 1-all checkmate!
This is a killer blow.
Oh my god.
Oh, he's enjoying himself a bit too much here, isn't he?
We see a reaction. Magnus is mouse slipped! Oh no!
Magnus mouse slipped! Back on 2 seconds! Oh my god! What an Armageddon!
He's so good. He's so good at thinking on the fly.
It's over. Magnus Carlsen, he takes it after an exciting final match here. It's all about the losers bracket today. We started the tournament with 8 players, everyone with 2 lives. But the players fighting today, they only have 1 life left, so it's going to be must-win. And to guide you through a dramatic day in the AI Cup, we do have the man with the fruity colors on his analysis board, Grandmaster David Howell, and the always energetic international master, Tanya Sachdev. And David, 6 hours in that chair yesterday. How did you sleep?
Oh, I was buzzing, I was pumped, full of adrenaline afterwards. I can only imagine how the players felt because it was a day of drama, maybe one of the most action-packed days we've seen so far this season.
Yeah, the highlight, Tanya, was the big winners final, the match between Magnus Carlsen and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. What was it about that match that had everyone just so excited?
It was awesome. It was world-class players playing world-class chess, and that was a reminder for all of us why Maxim Vachier-Lagrave is truly one of the best players for so many years, a speed chess specialist. On his best day, he's on equal ground against Magnus. Let's not forget, Magnus did not actually win the match. It was still tied, but it was that Armageddon game that got him the win with the black pieces despite the draw. It was scintillating chess.
Day 3 in the AI Cup. It was a long day of chess, and not only did it give us 2 Armageddons and that fantastic match with Magnus and MVL, it also gave us what was described as maybe the best and most genius move of the tournament.
The rooks will be off the board, and the other rook will find entry into enemy camp, and it's all happening.
Look at this. He's given up his rook.
Wow.
Amazing. This is genius. Pawn to c5, just ignoring the threat on the white rook, because look at the black knight. It's just too far away. It can no longer control the white pawn from running.
This could be the move of the tour so far.
Wow.
Firouzja, he resigns because this white pawn is about to promote. Yeah, there we go. It's on the board. Magnus, will he retreat his queen? As we're expecting, the fact he paused queen sacrifice. Magnus Carlsen surprising us, not retreating to a passive square, gives up his queen, and then Maxime gives the queen straight back. That was crazy. Suddenly, Magnus's queenside pawns will run. Black is too slow in this race.
And Maxime knows it. He looks away.
And Magnus takes the win. Maxime resigns.
Wow, we have the first decided game.
What?
Whoa.
A rook sacrifice instantly from Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. This is crazy. This is genius. There's checkmating ideas all over the place.
1 move now for Magnus Carlsen.
And he finds it.
Wow.
And he finds it in less than a minute.
Maxime, meanwhile, going forward with his king.
Wow.
Look at this. If he pushes his pawn, will he get mated, Magnus Carlsen, on the edge of the board? We all know queen versus rook, how hopeless that is. Magnus allows a checkmate on the board. And we have Armageddon. It is a dead drawn position. We should clarify the departure of knights. Magnus gave up his extra pawn to get the knights off the board. Means it's a dead draw, and Maxime doesn't try to flag. He offers the draw, and Magnus progresses.
After a huge fight between two fantastic chess players, they tied the match in the rapid portion. It ends with a match loss for MVL in Armageddon. And that means MVL is knocked down to the losers bracket. Magnus today gets a day off. He is straight through to tomorrow's grand final. And today it's all about the losers bracket. First, we have the losers semi-final with Anish Giri against Nepomniachtchi, best out of 2 rapid games. And then the losers final, where the winner of the losers semi-final will play Maxime Vachier-Lagrave for that second and final spot in the grand final. And as mentioned, it is also all about that final ticket to Toronto today. The easy answer is that for the 4 players fighting for that ticket, if, well, they win this tournament, they are secured that ticket, but it's not that simple. And Tanya, what is the scenario for Nepomniachtchi? How can he make it to Toronto?
Well, as you said, Kaya, the 3 players in the elimination bracket today, the clear path for them is win today, beat the final boss tomorrow, and you're through to Toronto. But it's a clear path, but also the hardest one to do. Nepomniachtchi, well, he's the lucky one because he's got more scenarios that work in his favor. Well, to start with, if he wins against Anish today, and against MVL, it doesn't even matter what happens in the grand final because he has enough tour points. He becomes uncatchable. He books that flight ticket to Toronto. But on the other hand, if he wins only against Anish today, he still has a shot. He needs some results to go his way. For Nepomniachtchi, for that ticket to Toronto, today is the big day.
Wow. And same for Anish Giri. What is the scenario, David, for Anish Giri?
That's right. Anish Giri just cannot afford to lose. If he loses either match today, if he doesn't make it to the grand final, he is out no matter what. He needs to win both matches and potentially even defeat Magnus, the big boss, as well tomorrow. Or he needs to rely on a bit of help in Division 2, where he has half an eye on Fedoseyev's results. Fedosey could catch him, even if Anish gets to the final.
Yeah. And we're going to update you on the scenario for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave later today, before he plays the losers final, because that all depends on what happens in the losers semifinals. But it is that 4th player playing in Division 2 here in the AI Cup, Fedosey. And that's a complicated one.
It's a complicated one. Lots of ifs and buts for the big fish. His best shot is to first win Division 2, get those 50 tour points, but he'd still need results to go his way in Division 1. One thing sure, Fedosey is not only concentrating on his game today, but also cheering really hard for Anish Giri against Anish's match with Nepomniachtchi, because Jan has more points, more tour points than Fedosey.
It's complicated, but it's also action-packed, and Fedosey is an important piece in this puzzle. He is playing the winners final today against Artemiev. We will, of course, pay attention to that match to find out if he is able to make it to the grand final in Division 2 and have a chance to go to the tour finals in Toronto.
I wonder who chat.
6 events. 8 players. We are nearing the end of the 2023 season, and the fight to secure a spot at the 2023 Tour Finals is on. Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, and Nodibek Abdusatorov have already qualified through winning individual events. Wesley So, Fabiano Caruana, Alireza Firouzja, and Denis Lazovic punched their tickets with tour points, and now only 1 spot remains. The tour finale will be played from December 9th to 16th in Toronto, Canada. Follow to see who will get the chance to fight for the 2023 Champions Chess Tour title.
Do you think this means a lot to them, David, the players, to be able to go to Toronto with players like Magnus, Hikaru, Fabiano?
There's always a bit of pride involved, and you never want to miss a top tournament if you're an elite player. It's going to be historic, this tour final in Toronto, gathering some of the world's best players in front of the fans. It's going to be a fantastic, fantastic event. So for sure, they'll be desperate to get there.
Yeah. And first of all, it's about the losers semi-final for Jan Nepomniachtchi and Anish Giri. They have made it there by playing some fantastic chess. Giri, for example, have knocked out Hikaru Nakamura and Shakhriyar Mamdyarov on his way, and Nepomniachtchi have played some fantastic chess, but they did meet on the very first day of the AI Cup. And what happened in that one, Tanya? It looks like decisive match win for Nepomniachtchi.
Jan was dominating that day, and he wrapped that up in just 3 games. He made it look easy. On day 1, it was Magnus and Jan Nepomniachtchi who got that match win with just 3 games. And it was not just the scoreline once again, but it felt like Jan was clearly the more powerful player. But ever since then, starting from day 2, we've seen a completely different Anish, and I have a feeling that Jan won't be playing the same Anish. For Anish as well, there's so much motivation to get this win in, to make it to Toronto. So I think it's going to be a brand new fight between these two. And at least for Giri, he's forgotten what happened on day 1 of this tournament.
Yeah.
Feels like it happened years ago now.
Feels like a long time ago, but for sure, Jan woke the beast. Anish looks in top form right now.
Yeah, he does. But we do know Jan Nepomniachtchi can play some fantastic chess as well. He is described as one of the biggest chess geniuses out there.
Я узнала Яна, когда он учился в 1 классе. Я вела предмет шахматы. Это, конечно, был очень уникальный ребенок, который на фоне всех детей очень сильно выделялся. Ян в 1 классе уже был играющий, глубоко думающий.
I was like 4 years or maybe 4.5, and I was introduced to chess rules because my grandpa and my uncle used to play a lot, and of course it was like curious, what are you guys doing?
His hand always was raised because he had a lot of questions.
He was very curious during all school. He was very attentive, very serious, and of course, his favorite subject in primary school was a chess lesson because he could play chess very well at this moment, and he explained his classmates some chess combinations, helped them to solve chess puzzles, and helped the teacher in chess.
Наверное, с самого первого дня нашего знакомства можно было сразу понять, что он не такой, как все. Но у меня много-то было. Он учился все сознательное время у нас в гимназии. Он ходил и на волейбол ко мне занимался. Естественно, все, что было связано со спортом, не совсем ему легко давалось, да, но мы четко понимали и знали его сильную сторону, это шахматы. И там, конечно, он был гениален, бесподобен, превосходен.
I think there are a lot of brilliant players, but I think the one who sticks out to me as a genius the most is probably Jan Nepomniachtchi, who, as I think most people will know, my opponent for the World Championship match.
I don't believe in genius, to tell the truth. I believe in work, as I said. I believe in talent. In his private life, he's, again, liveful guy. He loves partying, he loves social stuff, he loves sports. He's both talented and hardworking, and I really think that it's a great example for all the kids and all the teens in the world that success never comes alone.
Well, probably more time you spend, more motivated you get. Yeah, because I believe even after I entered, let's say, the elite group of players, yeah, I believe I crossed this 2700 in 2010 or something. I can't say that I did a lot of chess work. I did a lot of different stuff, and as well like this, video games and so on. So I was almost a semi-pro in Dota, and I had a lot of other hobbies. But quite recently, maybe like for the last few years, I just try to focus my attention and my energy on chess work and try to improve.
If we speak about his qualities that have made him to become the greatest in the world, I think the first is, of course, chess talent, then hard work, then extraordinary memory, extraordinary logic, of course, extraordinary thinking, extraordinary train of thought, non-standard problem solving, and his ability to focus on the main thing, his ability to calculate situation a few steps forward.
Очень было интересно с ним ездить на соревнования и наблюдать, когда этот маленький ребенок играет уже со взрослыми детьми, когда он сидит за столом, когда одна голова видна из-под парты, и он потирает руки, говорит, ну все, пора поднимать руки и сдаваться. В свободное от игры время решал сканворды, то есть ребенок был на тот момент очень уникальный и очень-очень сильно отличающийся.
The genius, Jan Nepomniachtchi, making a genius move yesterday in one of his games. David, what was this move that we called so genius?
Yeah, it was one of the highlights of the day, certainly one of the highlights of the tournament. It was this position against Firouzja. He needed to win, Jan, and he pushed his pawn forward. He gave a poisoned pawn to his opponent. Firouzja took the bait he shouldn't have done, but here was the trick. After a trade of rook, suddenly white is out of nowhere, out of the blue, winning. He gives up this rook, which is attacked, just ignoring it, pushing his pawn forward, because if the rook falls, the pawn out races the black knight. The black knight just too slow to stop it, and Jan went on to win.
Is he a genius, a chess genius, Tanya, Jan Nepomniachtchi, that has just arrived here?
You've got to be, otherwise you don't make it to the World Championship match twice.
Right.
He won 2 candidates back-to-back, and definitely it's his style of play, his ambitious, confident, speed chess that we see, even when there's a classical format. And today he's playing against Anish, who needs to keep an eye out on the clock. The first match in the AI Cup that they played, Jan would just break away on the clock so early on, have a 10 to 12 minute advantage, and that really came back to haunt Anish. So Anish has to have a better time control in this match today.
And he starts off with the white pieces. Anish, Giri, what is it about for Anish today?
I think just getting out of the opening in good shape. That was one area that normally Anish is really strong in, that let him down on day one of this event. In game one of their first match 3 days ago, Anish was just busted out of the first game. Out of the opening, he walked into Jan's preparation and there was no way back. He just couldn't recover. So I think starting with the white pieces is actually a good thing for Anish Giri today. He lost twice with black against Jan on day one. He will be hoping to strike back now.
All right, we are waiting for the losers semi-final to start. It's going to be best out of 2 rapid games. Only 2 games on the losers bracket. If they are tied after those 2 games, then it will be decided in Armageddon who goes through to face MVL, Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, in the losers final later today. And here we go, the first game has started.
Here we go, and it's a Petrov defense, known as one of the most solid openings for black out there. And okay, a quick trade of pawns in the center and all the knights staring at each other now. This is really topical stuff. This seems to happen, it's already happened this tournament, Tanya, but it seems to happen in a lot of really elite games right now.
Yeah, and especially in a lot of Jan Nepomniachtchi elite games. And we see Jan there, he seems to be grooving, looking very confident about his opening. Jan is known to play aggressive chess, and we've seen him play the knight off so many times. But then there was this shift that happened in his play, and I think it was around the 2021 World Championship match, where suddenly Jan was coming forward with a lot of more solid openings, and we're seeing him now employ the super solid, and also known as the Russian defense, the Petrov. He's got some great results in this one. Anish didn't really manage to get anything with the white pieces in their first match against the Petrov. I wonder what he has up his sleeves for this one.
Yeah, and look how quick the players have been firing off those moves. It's move 11 now, and a pawn sacrifice temporarily, at least from Jan Nepomniachtchi. Remember, as Tanya mentioned, for the World Championship matches, both against Magnus and against Ding, this has been the core, the heart of his opening repertoire as black. So he's spent months, pure months, studying this one. He knows everything there is to know. That's why I'm so surprised. Anish is kind of playing, he's walking into the cave here. He's playing in his opponent's home territory. And, okay, he takes the bait. White grabs a pawn in the center. But look at black's bishops. Look at the black queen, really active here. The white queen getting kicked around herself. And I'm not so sure Anish has reason to be happy here with the outcome of the opening. We see the queens disappear. White is a pawn up, but black has great compensation.
And that compensation is all around the piece activity and the better pawn structure that you're highlighting, David. That A2 pawn, it is tender. The bishop on E6 is attacking it. But you've got to be a little careful because taking it immediately could land you in big trouble. White will simply sidestep with the rook, and then you've got a double attack to deal with. The bishop's hanging, the rook is hanging on the other end of the board. So don't get too greedy just now. But it's really not about getting greedy. You could simply move the rook to one of the open lines, D8 or E8. I like the square D8, as you're pointing out. It's an open file. And like you said, enough compensation. All your pieces are playing. A2 is still hanging. Not really clear how you keep the compensation. And there we have it, rook to D8.
Yeah, so we're already in the endgame. We've barely played for 2 minutes and queens are off, all the knights have disappeared, and it is about this pawn structure. If white can somehow trade off all the rooks and keep his pawns intact, Anish will be the favourite, but you have to think that black's activity right now gives great compensation. It's tricky. The problem for white here, it is tricky to advance your pawn majority. You have 4 versus 3 on the king side, but you cannot push yet because of this annoying pin, and therefore your pawn in the centre is slightly disconnected from the rest of your army. Jan playing super fast and strange body language there, I've got to say. He looks like he's hiding from his own position, but I think secretly he'll be feeling pretty confident, especially if he keeps the pace going.
And he does keep the pace going, right? Immediately blitzes out the move 8-6. I like it because it takes a key developing square away from a white's dark squared bishop. Bishop to G5 would have been a tempo attacking that rook that just came out. But Jan not only creating some space around his king, but making sure that Anish's bishops remain inactive.
Who do you think the happier of the 2 players will be after the opening? Tanya, the outcome here?
It's so level right now, and you know, as Kaya, you said, it's a best of 2, so the margin for error is so little. You perhaps don't want to go all out, take your big chances early on. I don't think either of them are too displeased, but with the black pieces, to get this kind of activity, to get the space up on the clock, Jan should be happy, probably happier out of the 2 with this opening outcome.
Yeah, actually, to be honest, I would even take black's position. Normally, I'm quite materialistic. We've discussed that in previous days. Is greed good? White is a pawn up, but it's just so hard to kind of find moves here to come up with natural plans for white. Your queenside pawn structure, I'm looking at that left side of the board, and white's pawns there, they're just ripe for the picking at any point in the near future. I think Jan, just the fact as well that he's clearly prepared this opening, he's studied it with computers, maybe with his seconds, with coaches. I think that will favour him.
When you played an opening and prepared it for 2 World Championship matches, it doesn't get deeper than that. The prep is at the highest level. And Anish there tries to create some play on the queen side, also dissolving his own pawn structural weaknesses. Jan doesn't stop. It almost gets the feeling as if he knows every single thing in this position. The one thing I want to point out, David, it would be ideal traditional chess wisdom that the side that you have more pawns on, you want to start pushing them. For this one, it's the king side for Anish Giri. But for that, he needs to move the king from G1 to H1 to be able to advance the F pawn forward. Just the plan. But the problem with that is the moment that you move the king, the sidestep the king to that H1 square, that black bishop can jump over to C4, hit that rook on F1, and then the F2 pawn just becomes extremely weak. So it's really difficult for Anish to actually capitalize on that extra pawn on the king side.
Yeah, incredibly tough right now. And, OK, this is the AI Cup. I have a feeling Jan, at least until this last move, has studied this with neural network engines. We talked about his World Championship preparation. Any World Championship match, the top players in the world, they're looking at deep opening concepts, especially when it comes to pawn sacrifices. They're looking at with computers. If the computer says you can sacrifice a pawn and it's still playable, your position, that means it's a very kind of positive development for you.
And is it very typical AI then? What makes you think it's AI and not just a normal computer?
Well, we know AlphaZero was famous for pawn sacrifices, and it's long-term sacrifices. Here, actually, Jan has been given his pawn back, so he's not a pawn down anymore. Black has these doubled A pawns, but AlphaZero got a lot of success with long-term pawn sacrifices, pushing rook's pawns up the board, and it was not materialistic at all. And I think until AlphaZero came along, even the top kind of man-made computers like Stockfish, they were very materialistic. They loved grabbing pawns, even if the rest of their position didn't make much sense. And it was AI that kind of gave that human touch. It said, OK, these positions where it looks like there's compensation, they are actually playable. And it looks like one of those cases. Jan doing a bit of a dance here. He looks really happy.
Yeah, he's
really vibing to this one because it's so much his comfort zone, and you can tell why. You don't probably even have to be a Petrov expert. You give this position and you can see the piece activity. Look at those beautiful 2 rooks lined up for black on the E and the D line. The bishops in front of the pawns, really active squares. And there are also these potential tactics based on white's back rank weakness right now, David. I'm trying to calculate the line that if... Jan is really enjoying himself.
He must be listening to music, right?
I think the position is music to his ears right now. And the line I was wanting to point out, David, is I'm wondering if Anish actually took that pawn on a5 with all these tactical motives around the back rank. Can Jan actually get greedy with the pawn on e5? At first, you think rook e5 is met by a discovered check on h7, but then you just pick up the bishop, you lose the rook, and then you win a white's king.
Yeah, winning the king tends to be a good sign in any game. This is a back rank checkmate, and there's various spins on this, Tanya. The problem for Anish is he cannot defend his pawn in a healthy way. He would love to jump out the way, attacking this rook and defending this pawn, but same idea again. Rook takes pawn, luring the white rook forward, and suddenly, whoops, checkmate, and you're caught. Yeah, I was going to say, caught unawares here. That's a nice way of putting it. This would be disastrous for white, of course. So Anish defends the pawn with his bishop, but white's bishops are far less effective than black's. These bishops kind of stare at the whole board. White's bishop, especially this one, stares at its own pawn. And there we go. I was about to say it's going to get hit as well. Jan kicks this bishop away. Look how he's just completely prevented white from pushing pawns forward here. And if this bishop retreats, there's now access into the second rank. Feels like it's turning move by move. Still not kind of a losing position for white. You're still not significantly worse, but momentum black for sure.
All right. So we have seen Jan dancing so far on his camera, and I was just thinking about, they have such unnatural poses when playing chess. Like Anish is sitting like this. I would never sit like this. And Jan was sitting like this. I would also never sit like this. What's it about with the way you... Okay, this one now. And this one? I would never... What is it about the poses that you have while playing computer chess?
It's uncanny there, Kaya. You're like a copycat, just the way you could mimic those poses. I don't know what it is. I think there's a lot to do with psychology. A lot of players, sometimes they feel the weight of the occasion, therefore they have to prop up their head. Sometimes I know that for myself and a lot of top players, if we're losing, we don't want anyone to see us, so we have to cover. We don't kind of let anyone see our eyes and how upset we are. There's various poses. I'm not sure kind of the reasoning. Maybe it's just subconscious, but every player has their favorite pose. What's yours, Tanya?
That's really interesting that you say about, the typical chess pose, that it's to make sure that others can't see what's happening in. For me, this is how I would usually sit, but it's only so I don't get distracted by what's happening beyond.
Both in over the board and online?
Yes, I'm mostly an over the board player. I only started playing online with the pandemic. So, yeah, over the board, I feel that you'd always find me like this, and it's to kind of cut out and block out the world.
But what about sitting like this? Why can't they just sit like this?
Chess players, I know they have back problems sometimes because leaning over the board too much, at least in my case. My favourite pose is just arms crossed, just the death stare.
Oh, fierce. Oh, very nice. Yeah.
I've never seen David do that in an actual game.
It's because we've never played over the board, Tanya.
And I've seen you at tournaments.
Yeah, this is true.
I bet, if you actually worked with, a mental coach or something, I bet that mental coach would actually say, it also depends on how you're sitting across your opponent. Sit with confidence, I guess. It must have something to say.
Definitely. Confidence, poker face, sometimes actually scaring your opponent with kind of eye movements, like Nakamura does sometimes, just the shock. I know that when I played at the World Cup recently, the Wang Hao, the Chinese grandmaster who knocked me out, I would play literally a forced move. It was check. I have no other legal move other than moving my king. And suddenly he's like, what? And it really got in my head. So, wow. Tactics, though, here, Tanya. Not reacting to the threat on the white bishop. He's recaptured. This is really risky from Anish Giri, but I think he's worked it all out. And look at Jan. Suddenly his eyes widen. He gets more interested, more excited about the position, so he leans back forward and covers his mouth, covers his face.
A really interesting sequence of moves, because with that pawn push G5, I think we should do a little deep dive here, because Jan came in with the attack on white's bishop on f4 when he played the move g5. And I think what Anish didn't like about just going on the defense with that bishop is then black's bishop falls back, defends the a5 pawn, the rook jumps into d2 as you're pointing out, and that a pawn can eventually end up creating a lot of trouble for white. So Anish going for a very concrete approach. Offense is the best defense in these kind of positions when you've got to be careful. So he does take the pawn on a5, hits black's bishop in return. Jan falls back with the bishop, so both players playing with tempo. Now the rook is attacked. You've got to move it to a square where you can attack another piece. Anish falls back, hitting the other bishop now, and that's when we saw that reaction from Jan. Because he's got some options, David, right now, where to move with the bishop. If you fall back to b5, continuing with the theme of attacking the rook, I think Anish just slides over with the rook one square, and now we can see that balance is restored once the bishops are captured.
Yeah, it's like a little dance, a little tango between the white rook and those black bishops. The black bishops finding nice safe squares, but not quite in time to win white's bishop. I don't think a trade here would be helpful, for example. And, OK, we see a trade in a different scenario. Will now Jan go for this tactic you mentioned, Tanya? I think he can take this pawn. No reason not to right now. It might look like this bishop check jumping out the way is a discovered attack, but remember, this would be a blunder. King takes bishop, walks into, now for white, a back rank checkmate yet again. And it's on the board, rook takes e5. So this is a pin. Slightly awkward right now for Anish Giri. I'm expecting him to break the pin. The most natural way to break a pin is to defend the kind of the piece that's pinned at the back here. That's the white rook. So shuffling the king across. There we go, it's played.
Really nice call that you've got to be on the defense. You need to break the pin on the spot because potentially f5 was a big threat, winning that bishop if you did not guard that rook. But David, now white is threatening to go bishop to h7. The discovered check wasn't possible earlier, but with no back rank weakness, it is. So black perhaps doesn't have time to get into activity with rook d2. You really want to come in with your rook, but I think this fails to bishop h7 now.
Yeah, it looks like black is about to deliver a mating attack, but bishop takes bishop to h7, and this time there is an escape square for the white king just in time. You don't want to run into the eye line of the black bishop, but you can run to the center. Still a complicated position, but certainly not advantageous for black anymore. And I think it's a really important point. If black tries to re-establish this pin, white can step the rook forward, and just in time after the pawn steps. Actually, a few ways to break the pin now. If you want to be really flashy, you can even give a check. And black cannot take this bishop because of rook takes rook. This shows all of the tactics we're showing now, all of the tricks. This shows that it's still rich, full of life, despite the fact a lot of pieces, a lot of material has disappeared right now. And it's opposite color bishops. Actually, this line on the board.
Yeah. Black still in driver's seat. I think Jan is playing for the initiative here. He's the one with the more active bishop, the more active rooks, putting the pressure. But again, the big eternal question of chess, is it going to be enough?
Oof. What do you think, Tanya? I'm going to get there first because I think it's going to be a draw.
Yeah, David, we're good friends. I'm not going to disagree with you on this one. I think that despite the fact that Jan is putting the pressure, one gets the feeling that too many trades have happened. The opposite color bishop, game one most likely to end in a draw.
Okay. Which will be a good start for both of them, but there will only be one more rapid game to win the match. If that one is a draw as well, if this is a draw, then it will be decided in Armageddon. I think odds are big. We will see some Armageddon in the two matches today, hopefully.
Yeah. Imagine the fate of a whole season, one whole year leading up to this tour finals, settled in just one Armageddon game.
Ooh,
just a shootout till the bitter end. That would be brutal.
Yeah. And they will probably then put a lot of thought into their time bids if we do see Armageddon.
Yeah, and the opening choices, everything that would be dramatic.
Do you think they've even already sort of made a plan for what they will bid if they do end up in Armageddon?
It's interesting.
It's possible because it's just a best of two, right?
Yeah.
So there is a big chance of actually going into that. So at least to have in mind a sort of a general strategy. Do you want to play with the black pieces? How low are you willing to go for those black pieces, the time bid? Because we saw that play quite a big role in the Armageddons that we had yesterday. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's something that they have given a thought.
Yeah.
It was interesting to hear Magnus in his interview yesterday. He said his opponent, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, due to his mathematical background, had clearly done some planning, clearly done some research onto kind of where the best kind of time to bid is, or kind of the bounds which are kind of acceptable that maximize your results. And yeah, Maxime there went over 10 minutes, so it was really interesting.
And Magnus usually is so good at getting into his opponent's heads, and we've seen it throughout the tour, right? He's almost able to predict what his opponent's going to bid. But yesterday, he wasn't against Maxime because he mentioned that he could have actually bid for 2 more minutes on the clock, so he kind of missed the mark by quite a lot. Really interesting to see that.
But it will be, if in the grand final tomorrow we do see Armageddon again with Magnus, he did sort of hint that maybe he wants to copy MVL later because he thinks MVL must be, with his mathematical background, really good at those time bids. That will be interesting.
Yeah, maybe MVL watched that interview though, and then the mind games. He knows Magnus is going to call his bluff, so he might bluff and go lower. It's,
by 1 second. Ooh. Yeah. It's always fun with Armageddon. And Jan Nepomniachtchi in this one, thinking now for 3 minutes. What is that about?
I think it's purely a dilemma now how to keep the game going. If all of the rooks disappear from the board, because it is opposite colour bishops, the game is nearly definitely going to end in a draw. White will hold the light squares, black will hold the dark squares, and no way kind of past each other. But while rooks remain, there's always some chance. And the problem for black is you need to keep as many rooks on the board as possible, and you need to start pushing the A-pawn. Black's main kind of ace up his sleeve here right now is the A-pawn. So the problem is if you start pushing it, white will move his bishop away, rooks will disappear from the board. And if you kind of switch your attentions to the other flank, white has some targets there. White's rook on the 4th rank, attacking black's f-pawn. So I think he's just debating how hard he wants to push for a win here. Interesting move, really mysterious move, I've got to say, this last one. And a slight shake of the head from Jan.
Yeah. I wonder if that shake of head is just him taking his time and kind of realizing that he's gotten everything that you can with the black pieces in the Petrov, but maybe there's nothing more to be done. Because now, if both pairs of rooks come off the board, it's a draw because it's an opposite color bishop. And for Anish, it's very possible that he just retreats with the bishop and at least gets 1 pair of rooks off the board. The other rook on c4, which will remain, is quite an active rook. I like the move that you're pointing out because that rook to c4 also hits the pawn on f4, and you end up trading 1 rook on the e-line. Bishop f3 has been played. I think Jan is just sort of getting ready and accepting that he didn't get much out of this opening. And Kai, you mentioned that a draw would be a result that both should be happy about, but I think it's a bigger draw for Jan, and just a slightly better draw for Jan in a best of 2 the next game he starts with white.
Yeah, he should be happy. I don't think the shake of the head is anything to kind of read into there. The outcome of the opening was great. As black, that's the problem. Sometimes you play a great game, a fantastic opening, and if your opponent, as white, sets up a solid defense, it's hard to break through. Jan,
he continues with his mysterious expressions, David.
He's so harsh on himself. That's the issue. I think maybe that's held him back in his career. Just he doesn't let go of mistakes, and he hasn't made any mistakes here, Tanya. I think it's just been a level game throughout.
It really has. And do you think Jan is somewhat similar to Hikaru in that manner, with the expressions that they give out and how unguarded and unfiltered they are?
I think maybe Hikaru plays more for the gallery than Jan does. Jan genuinely has these emotions going through his head.
He will have them in over the board as well.
Definitely. I mean, we saw it against Ding. It was just heartbreaking to watch when things turned against him in that tiebreak. Jan, he was just overcome, and understandably when the stakes are that high. And again, the stakes are extremely high in this battle. Maybe that's why the emotion's building. And Anish, meanwhile, trying to stay calm, looks very calm.
And we keep looking at their cameras today. Another thing I noticed, and now we know Jan Nepomniachtchi is in a hotel room. He's in the Netherlands. But very often you will see beds behind players. They often play chess in bedrooms. I guess there's like offices and guest rooms and stuff like this, and interrupt me if we should talk about the move. But isn't it kind of strange that your job and earning like thousands and thousands of money playing these tournaments, it's in your bedroom?
Yeah. It's the most comfy place in the world. Why leave?
We're blessed.
Yeah, we're lucky.
If I could choose my job again, I would be a chess player as well. You just never have to leave your bedroom.
Yeah, one of my favorite things was in the play-ins for one of these tournaments this season, we have these extras, these second cameras set up just to monitor players. And I did see one, I won't name who it was, one player, he was lying in bed. The laptop was balanced on his belly, and he was just playing, and he was winning loads of games. It was incredible. I mean, you've got to play where you're comfortable. Sometimes that's the bedroom.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that's why when the pandemic hit and the whole work from home happened, it wasn't that big of a change for chess players because we've always been working from home.
Yeah, that's true. In pajamas pants and maybe no pants. What do I know?
Family-friendly show, Kaya.
Save those questions for the interviews later.
Are you wearing pants today? Anyways, what's happening on the board?
Anyways, I think we might be about to see a draw. We have seen this position now already. This is the second time we've seen this position. If the white king goes back towards black's f-pawn, the black rook moves away. I think we'll see the players agree to peace very, very shortly. Not really many ways to kind of avoid this right now. I think it's inevitable. There we go. The white king goes forward. Black's f-pawn is about to drop. It's only black who can really play for a win here, but how do you improve your pieces? The black bishop totally stuck right now. Black's a-pawn kept under watchful gaze from the white rook, and black's rook just tied down as a defender. If it tries to activate on the d-file, we'll see Giri's king drop back, and the position will just fizzle to that repetition, to that draw.
It's ending in a draw, but I want to point out one dynamic that exists in this one, David, that white has to watch out for. Don't get too greedy with that f4 pawn. You've been pointing out this a passer that black has, and let's make a move for black that, well, you can't really defend the f4 pawn, but let's say you go king to g6.
Oh, wow.
On the board, quick call, David the Prophet. And if white takes an f4, I think there are dangers in this position, and the bar does drop because black can just start pushing the a-pawn. And after a4, white's rook is pinned on f4. The bishop on g4 doesn't have enough time to come and actually fight against the passer.
Yeah, no way to stop it. You can only stop this pawn on a light square, and the white bishop cannot get round in time to block it. All these squares that it wants to use are covered. So that would have been a huge, huge trap. Nepomniachtchi still looking for tricks. This is why the top players in the world are so strong. But of course, Giri plays a more practical move. He's going to blockade the pawn on a light square. And this is where the opposite color bishops comes into play. The blockade is impossible to break once your opponent owns a certain color complex. And okay, the black rook comes across. At least he's asking questions still. He's hitting this bishop, but this move should clinch the draw now. Rook to c6, really accurate play. This is a pin. The black rook now guaranteed to be traded off. And the key difference from your line, Tanya, is that the pawn cannot march. So this one will be a draw.
Yeah, very precisely navigated to safety by Anish Giri, this one. But for Jan, I think he's got reasons to be pleased. Starts with the black pieces, absolutely no problem out of the opening, and kind of gets a draw on his terms.
Yeah, it's always a moral victory, psychological win to put your opponent under pressure, to be the one asking the questions. And not once in this whole game did it look like black was ever in trouble. Whereas for Anish, he was the one avoiding things, dodging pitfalls. And this game, we'll see it lock up, just get completely blocked. The problem for black is there's no way into the white position with his king. And Giri will just sit passively and wait.
Yeah, and how cool is it that we've got this elimination bracket today, and the three players who are in it, each one of them is fighting for a spot to Toronto, and the only way that they get there is by making it to tomorrow. So it's almost like a script that you can't write. If you sat down at the start of this tournament and predicted this, it would be really hard to get to this point. Yeah. And here we are.
Here we are, and it's actually going to go down all the way to the final day of the last event before Toronto. Yeah. It's incredible. We could, as you said, we couldn't have written a better script for it.
It's not just these three players. It's Fedoseev in Division 2. Somehow he's made it this far. It's pretty much everyone who can get that spot in Toronto has brought their A game this tournament, and they're really pushing hard to make it there. And that's how much they want it.
Yeah. And as Tanya mentioned before this game started, for Fedoseev in Division 2, most likely he will have to win Division 2. He is today playing the winners final. And 2 games have been played now against Vladislav Artemiev. They are tied 2 draws so far, best out of 4 games. So we will keep an eye on that, definitely.
And that's a tough one. Artemiev is such a strong player. Yeah. It's not going to be easy for Fedoseev today.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. And he has to win today, maybe potentially win tomorrow, as you mentioned, Kaya.
Yeah.
So Fedoseev, work to do.
Definitely.
Business time.
Yeah. And these two as well, definitely Anish Giri, he has to win this match. And, well, so does Jan Nepomniachtchi.
Because everyone who's playing today.
It's all about winning today. You just have to win today. It's must win for all the players, and we love that. But this game, probably not a win for anyone. It's a draw, probably.
Yes. This one will end in a draw. The one script that we could have written at the start of the tournament is that whoever wins today will meet Magnus Carlsen in the grand final.
That's true. That's true. He's been on fire lately. 3rd consecutive grand final for Magnus Carlsen. How impressive is that?
Yeah, I think it's just those rest days. He loves those rest days, and you get one on the 4th day of every tournament if you keep winning. That's what motivates Magnus. And meanwhile, we see some pawns disappear, but it doesn't change anything here. White has a full blockade, a fortress, as we call it. No way through for the Black King.
It doesn't change anything, but the aggression with which Jan has even handled this draw position is really impressive. He's just gone max on, ultra pro max on the whole thing, but it's not enough. You do everything, but White's bishop is stopping the a3 pawn. The king defends the king side, and we do have a result. It is a draw.
We have a draw. Game 1 is finished. Anish Giri had the white pieces in this one. No big reaction, but only one rapid game to go where he will have the black pieces. So do you think Anish is not too happy with how this game?
I think how it started and the pressure that Jan managed to create out of the opening, Anish should be happy that he navigated it precisely to a draw and to safety. But yes, I think he was hoping for more with his only white in the best of 2.
So does that mean Nepomniachtchi is quite happy now, and he has 9 minutes now to prepare for a game with the white pieces?
Yeah, you couldn't tell it from his face, couldn't tell it from his camera, his expressions, but I think deep down he should be quite content. He did beat Giri twice with white on day 1, so it's going to be an uphill struggle, I think, for Giri.
Yeah. One more rapid game to go in this match in the losers semi-final. Now, don't miss out on September, you guys. Through the end of this month, claim up to 30% off all new subs on Twitch. Subscribers gain access to exclusive break time content during broadcast and score an ad-free experience on Chess.com. So don't miss out on the deals this September. Describe now, everyone. And don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few minutes with the final rapid game in the losers semi-final.
It doesn't look like much, but neither would a Sicilian defense to the untrained eye. This is a performance enhancer. You don't see it? How about now? Manage your air quality, sharpen your performance, change the game with Air Things.
Love playing chess variants? Or just looking for something new? Join us for the Variants Community Series. Every 2 months, we'll be featuring a different variant in a series of events and competitions. Learn a new variant and compete against other players for prize money, or just play for fun. Look for community arenas, streamer arenas, and championship events. 6 weekly arena tournaments held every Thursday will be followed by a championship event with cash prizes, including a $1,000 first place prize. The 3rd and final weekly arenas will be streamer arenas, featuring gifted subs as prizes. Win any of these events to qualify for the championship. The Variants Community Series kicks off on September 7th with King of the Hill, where the first to occupy the center wins the game. But getting checkmated still loses. And join the Variants Club today to learn more about upcoming events, how to participate, and much, much more. See you in the arena on Chess.com.
It is must win today for Nepomniachtchi and Anish Giri in the losers semi-final. They drew the first game. One more rapid game to go. Will we see a winner, or will we see Armageddon in the fight to go through to the losers final to be played later today against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave? This is the AI Cup, and we're also excited to announce that at this tournament, Chess.com is partnering with the browser maker Opera. We are thrilled about this collaboration. It is something for chess lovers everywhere. It truly puts the game right at your fingertips, no matter where you are. Imagine that, your very own chess browser. And using Opera's AI tool, Aria, we did interviews with the players before this tournament, asking Aria to give itself out as Anish Giri. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to do an interview with Chess.com. But I have to tell you, we actually already did the interview with you using Opera's AI engine Aria. We asked it to answer questions as Anish Giri. And are you ready to be confronted with your answers?
Yes, definitely.
All right, so first question was, who is your biggest inspiration? And you answered, my biggest inspiration has to be the legendary chess player, Garry Kasparov.
Wow, so far so good. Yeah, I think I would have said the same actually.
What is your favorite time control? My favorite time control is classical time control.
I think it's the one that I had the best results in, probably by far, although hard to say. If I think of my style, I would expect myself to be strong and rapid, but somehow the results don't show the same. I guess it's because I've been sort of focusing on classical for just much too long.
What is your favorite opening? And the answer was, if I were to choose a favorite, it would be the Ruy Lopez.
I think the AI wasn't fed enough of my tweets where I'm constantly promoting my Niner, of course.
And then we asked, who is your biggest rival? And the answer was, players like Magnus Carlsen, Fabiano Caruana, and Vladimir Kramnik have been formidable opponents and have consistently challenged me in tournaments and matches.
Wow. Yeah, no, it's a decent answer because I've played with these players a lot of games. So yeah, good answer there, but a little too generic, I think.
What is your ultimate goal in chess? My ultimate goal in chess is to become the world chess champion.
Yeah, again, generic, but in this case it works very well. I think that's the, for me, I think that's the ultimate goal.
Have you reached your peak as a chess player? The answer was, I believe there is still room for further growth and improvement in my chess career. Would you agree?
Yeah. I feel I'm sort of improving as a chess player, for sure. But it's extremely challenging.
How would you describe your personality? So I'll sum up. It says composed, analytical, ambitious, diligent, respectful and sportsmanlike, and with a sense of humor.
Yeah, I hope the respectful and sportsmanlike was not the sign of the humor, but very, very, flattering answer, which is also fitting because I am not modest, and I didn't mention modesty.
What is your IQ? And the answer, and I hope you can give us the correct answer, the answer was, I don't have a specific IQ score to share with you.
But I remember I once had an online test that I wanted to do. I don't know why, probably some kind of spam came and maybe a 10-minute IQ test. Very, very nice. So, or 15. So anyway, very short. So I decided to complete it, and it went pretty smooth. And I got, I think, 139, yeah?
Whoa.
And it said it said, okay, you are this good grade, smart, all that. And it showed that if you are above 140, you are a genius. And I have 139. So I think, okay, hang on a second. Let me do one more. Because I just want to cross the 140, right? That's all. Who doesn't want to cross these things, yeah? So I did one more. 136 came out. I did one more. 138 came out. I did one more. 133 came out. I did one more. 137 came out. 139. I kept doing them. It was already late. I couldn't cross the 140. Whatever I do, I just cannot be a genius.
What is the best thing about being you, Anish? And it answered, one of the best things about being me is the opportunity to pursue my passion for chess at the highest level. Chess is not just a game for me, it's a way of life.
Oh, very, very, very cool. Very cool. Very nice. I'm a little surprised it limits the answer to chess only. I would probably give a more general answer as well, to have a family myself now and all the friendships and, all this blah, blah, I would mention for sure.
Do you know who hacked your Twitter account? And let's see if it gives an answer. No, it says, well, it's quite an unfortunate incident that my Twitter account was hacked. As of now, I don't have specific information about the individuals responsible for the hack.
Yeah, that is true. I did this police report back then, and I guess they treated it as just like another bike theft.
Yeah.
So it means nothing came from that.
Awesome. Thank you for answering, Anish. You just got AI'd. Well, a little bit up and down for Arya there. I'm not sure if it's quite ready to take over for Anish Giri answering questions for him. But doing quite a good job. And talking about AI, the trophy in the AI Cup is AI generated. This is the trophy, and it's up for bids, you guys. And you can place your bid at chesschamps.io. I think this is a really cool trophy, actually. And talking about trophies. We want to have a competition today. We want to give out something really cool. We want to give out David Howell's Grand Like a Grandmaster book, and you can win it if you caption this and share your caption using hashtag #ChessChamps on Twitter or X. Caption this. Do you have an immediate caption, Tanya?
Oh my gosh, I'm looking at that. It's scary. Yeah, grind like a grandma?
Yeah. Oh, nice one.
Just looks like something from Halloween.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I can't wait to see some of the answers.
And the prize, if the winner with the best caption, we will choose one by the end of the show, wins David's brand new Grand Like a Grandmaster book, signed by Magnus Carlsen himself. And it should be signed by you as well, David.
That's right. I have a copy of the book here. I did trick Magnus into signing it the other day.
Nice.
He very kindly signed, as you can see, just here. So I'm going to try and sign it as well. And do you want to do it live?
Yes.
Okay. Just a little message. Never stop grinding.
Like a grandma.
There we go. And a signature.
I want this book now.
Oh, I'll get you one, Kaya.
Yeah.
There we go. Signed by both of us.
Fantastic. This fantastic book with 2 signatures by 2 fantastic grandmasters is up for grabs for the winner of our competition. So place your caption on using hashtag #ChessChamps on Twitter. Anish Giri, well, he loves tweeting, but he has to play some chess right now. And he has to win, or at least not lose, this final rapid game in the losers semi-final against the happy Jan Nepomniachtchi. He is finding his rhythm, grooving to some music today on Nepomniachtchi. This will be game 2, the final rapid game in the losers semi-final. If we have a winner in this game, that player is going through to the losers final to face Maxim Vachier-Lagrave just after this game. If it is a draw, then we will see Armageddon. Here we go, Jan Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces.
Here we go. Anish, in that AI interview, said his favorite opening was the Sicilian Najdorf, but he's gone for the Berlin defense, a rock-solid opening here. I haven't seen Anish employ this too regularly in recent times, and Jan does not go for any forced draws. We breathe a sigh of relief. The Berlin, of course, known for that. Instead, we see a slower variation. And this last move, pawn to c3, is quite rare, I believe, Tanya.
A slower variation of the anti-Berlin here by Jan Nepomniachtchi, so still keeping the game alive. I think this approach by Anish to go into the super solid Berlin, it's a clear indication that he wants to now get to the Armageddon. He's happy with the black pieces to just not get into any big fight, any big duel where Jan Nepomniachtchi and his aggressive style can thrive. But Jan not letting it go so easy, so we still have a game on our hands, and Anish falls back with the bishop, and it's Jan who slows down. Does that surprise you?
It does surprise me, firstly, because Jan went for this kind of bishop for knight exchange, then played this rare move on the last turn, pawn to c3, and to kind of pause after one of the most natural moves for black is slightly strange. He's looking off to the left, or his left, Jan Nepomniachtchi there. That often means players are in recall mode. Just trying to remember his opening theory here. For sure, it's something he's prepared before, maybe even for a World Championship match. But it is Jan's style to play quickly, confidently in the opening, to try and kind of assert his dominance over his opponent, just to scare him. When these two met a few days ago, Jan played so quickly as white. I think after 20 moves of the first game, he had over 15 minutes. Now, the fact that he slowed down is not a positive sign for him.
Yeah. I agree with you, David, and that also so early on in the game. And let's also just remind everyone that for Anish, tour points are not going to be enough. If he loses this match, he's out of contention. Yeah. On the other hand, for Jan Nepomniachtchi, today is actually the biggest day.
Yeah.
If he wins both his matches, he's through to Toronto. He wins against Anish, he beats Maxime later on, and that's all that he needs to do. If he wins this one, Kaya, he still has a big chance, even if he loses later, but he'll need some results to go his way.
Yeah, that's true. This one it's especially dramatic for Anish Giri.
Yeah.
Well, Jan Nepomniachtchi as well. They just both have to win this one. That's just how it is.
It's easy. They just need to beat several world-class players in a row. They cannot afford to lose any game. Oh, yeah, tough situation to be in, of course. And eventually he does make a decision, knight b to d2. I want to praise Anish as well for being really flexible. Clearly this was his plan, the Berlin defense coming into this game, because the Sicilian did not work out for him on day one of this event against Jan. He got hit in the bishop b5 check Sicilian a couple of times, struggling out of that opening. And good wisdom for anyone. If you're struggling, not liking the positions, not enjoying what your opponent's throwing at you, switch things up in the next game. Often that gives you a new lease of life, and it keeps your opponent guessing, keeps them surprised. And Anish, he plays a really ambitious move, actually. He brings the black bishop out. A more solid player or someone kind of less inclined towards attacking, like me, might have just castled the black king. That would have been a safe move, of course. But he's keeping Jan guessing. Look how the black king, once the black queen moves out the way, can actually choose either flank to castle on. He's waiting. It's a bit of a kind of guessing game right now. He's saying, depending where white puts the king, I'll choose which flank I put my black king, and then we might even see mutual attacks. But first, Jan goes hunting for the bishop pair. Black has the two bishops due to an earlier trade. And normally you don't want to allow your bishops to fall, especially black's light squared bishop, which is the better of the two.
Black has the bishop pair, white has the more flexible pawn structure. So I would definitely agree with you that for Anish it's important. He's already doubled up the c-pawns to actually retain that bishop pair advantage that he has. Two moves come to my mind here for Anish, head and hands right now. Bishop can fall back to d7. But, David, that's a square that you perhaps want your queen on at some point to allow that queenside castling that you were pointing out. Or you could get more aggressive with black in this position and go all the way forward to g4. Anish reaches out for his mouse and he does take a decision. He's going aggressive mode. Bishop g4 hits the queen. And Jan immediately answers with queen to b3, attacking b7. Anish returns the favor with getting his king to safety, defending that f7 pawn that you were just highlighting. But there is another pawn hanging in the situation.
Yeah, and the big question now, it's actually a critical moment quite early on in this game. Both players have slowed down. Queen takes b7. Can white get greedy? Evaluation bar says no, but from a human perspective, it's not immediately clear where the refutation of this move lies. You've won a pawn. It's a very important pawn as well, because black is left with a wreckage of a structure. Isolated pawns, doubled pawns all over the place, more targets. But white is temporarily behind in development. So Tanya, do you see what was wrong with this? He didn't go for this. He first kicked away the black bishop. This is complicated stuff.
It's really complicated. I don't see a direct way to actually trap white's queen or to get to it, but I think it's about the initiative again. In this case, it would be about the initiative.
Ooh,
sorry about that.
Nice.
But it's all about development, right? All of black's pieces are playing. White doesn't have the possibility to go castle with the king, because then the bishop would jump on to e2, attacking the rook and the pawn on d3. The queen on b7 vulnerable. Even a move like queen to d7, defending the c6 pawn, comes to mind. And the eval bar doesn't like it. To me, it felt like a natural approach here. Yeah, David, not sure then. What is the exact refutation to this?
Yeah, I did just check there, and this is actually not an obvious move. So credit to both players for spotting that this would have actually favoured black. The retreat, knight to d7, it's all because this knight is hanging. White loses time having to retreat it or defend it, and then suddenly the black knight would leap, it would pounce, and this queen is lacking squares. Note how this pawn is suddenly undefended as well. This would lead to huge trouble for white, because after queen takes pawn, your queen actually might even get trapped. And here we would see the queen doing a dance and the pawn falling and white's king in mortal danger. So instead of greed here, Jan wisely decided to hit this bishop first. And the question is, does Anish play safety first chess? Retreating this bishop back to its start square would no longer gambit this pawn. But the more ambitious move, of course, is to keep the bishop on an active post. And maybe the same tactics, maybe queen takes b7, still met by this idea of knight dropping back and knight leaping.
That's actually an awesome tactic that you're pointing out. You retreat to go forward on the next move, loose pieces drop off, and full board awareness, right? You're trying to get to the queen on b7, but also hitting the knight on the king side, and another weakness at the center of the board. So just covering all points there. Really nice tactic in a counter-attacking way, making sure that the b7 pawn is defended. To your first earlier question about the bishop retreat, I do like the more active approach here, keeping it on this h5 d1 diagonal. And the reason I like it is, David, because if white was ever to go castling, then the idea that we pointed out earlier is always in the air with the bishop jumping to e2. So it's still not very clear for Jan Nepomniachtchi, how would he get his king to safety?
Yeah, and Anish is going through all the poses right now on the camera. I think he wants to play the active move, of course, but he's meditating first. You've got to do what you got to do. He's using the force, just levitating the mouse, the pieces with his mind. But I'm expecting that move, just like you there, Tanya. Active play. Nearly 3 minutes, though, thinking about this one move. Nepomniachtchi seems to be getting a bit restless, rocking back and forth in his chair. And eventually, Giri takes the safe approach. The bishop not a happy camper, retreating back to its start square, but at least now there's no tricks. White's queen cannot go hunting for pawns. And black will gain some time back by kicking back the white knights in the next few turns. Mind games, I think, there, Tanya.
Wow. And look at that. The bishop retreats and then the knight retreats with the idea that you pointed out. The bishop on c1 is defending the knight on g5. So it's not hanging, but that knight from d7 is landing on c5 in the next move. So taking advantage of that queen placed on the queen side, which is a bit vulnerable. And at some point, Anish has the f5 break in mind to try to open up the position, open up the king side and get more activity against White's uncastled king.
Yeah, if black can throw pawns forward, I know many attacking players would love that, especially Anish, if he gets the opportunity, if he feels that Jan is taking too many liberties, leaving the king in the center too long. It might just be time to castle, I was going to say, but he drops his queen back first. That's preempting an attack. Now the black knight will not be hitting the white queen, will not gain time. So yeah, just very logical play. And the question is, does black start kicking back white's knights now? For example, this knight can be forced back. Maybe this knight can be forced back later. Or does black go active, start trying to break out? Really in the balance right now. I think it's a level position, but the fact that the pawn structure is slightly asymmetrical here means that chances for both sides.
But moving 2 pieces backwards there for Anish Giri, is that a bad sign for him?
Usually it would be. I think this is one of those scenarios where it's okay, and that's because the center is mostly blocked. If the center of the board is open, you don't have the luxury of time. You cannot just retreat your pieces because your opponent will be able to kind of thrust pieces forward. But if the center is blocked, kind of tempi, kind of move by move, it's less important.
Okay.
That's why white's king at the moment is safe enough in the center because all the lines are closed. So yeah, pawn structure determines everything. If it's locked, then you can slowly maneuver your pieces around, even retreating. Sometimes you've got to go back to come forward, and that's what Giri is trying to do.
Is there a chance Jan won't castle his king?
Definitely. There's a chance he could castle on either side still. He's trying to keep his options open. Okay, now he trades knight for bishop. Now it's opposite color bishops again. Still knights in the mix. I think he will eventually castle kingside.
Okay.
Whoa! Jan doing Jan things or not seems to be the answer there. Wow, that's an aggressive move.
He's opening up his king before he's castled. Has he forgotten this isn't the King's Gambit? Jan, of course, famous for that opening. He's played it a lot recently. The King's Gambit is pushing this pawn forward on move 2, throwing it away, basically giving up a pawn for open lines. And he's trying to do the same here. But he's really keeping Anish guessing.
The last time Jan played King's Gambit, it didn't go his way. It was in the SCC against Magnus Carlsen. A 17-move loss for Jan Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces in the King's Gambit. Similar ideas of breaking in the center, but definitely, David, as you say, it's not move number 2, so it's a better position like that. And I think, as you pointed out earlier, the king might be headed towards the queen side now.
Yeah, I'm really surprised Anish let the white bishop develop so quickly and so easily to such an active square, because now white is kind of really quick here. White is going to castle queenside on the next turn, knowing Jan, and okay, this is Anish's idea. He's fighting fire with fire. White through the f-pawn forward, black through the f-pawn forward, and the position is exploding.
It's exploded because white really doesn't have any time to get the king to the safety. The last move played by Anish also threatens to open up the rook, which is lined up against white's bishop. So pawn takes pawn in the center is a big threat right now, which is why Jan gets his bishop back to safety. David, I get the feeling that this very aggressive approach by Jan with that f-pawn moving forward without finishing his development could backfire.
It really could, but it's kind of time is being of the essence right now for Anish Giri. If white gets just one more move and castles, very healthy position for white. So can he strike while the iron is hot? Does he have a way to take advantage of this unique opportunity, just this one move before white's king darts to safety?
Interesting, intense. And Anish Giri is burning time on his clock. We know Jan Nepomniachtchi is extremely good at speed chess. Maybe a little bit better than Anish Giri when you get down to those bullet times.
They're both really strong in speed chess, but I think you're right. If Jan gets a lot of time advantage, which we saw him get in their first encounter at the AI Cup, it usually doesn't go well for Anish. But clearly, Anish has things in control in this match. Both these games, He's done good time management. And now Anish takes the decision to actually create a weakness in the center. I like it, not only opening up the F-line for the rook, but also making sure that Jan is stuck with a long-term weakness. That pawn in the center has got no best friends. It's a lonely pawn.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, that poor pawn in the center. Whoa.
Wow.
But there's a sacrifice on the board. It looks like a sacrifice. It isn't actually. Giri playing for tactics, and he looks proud of himself. He looks pretty pleased, Anish, on the camera right there. He leaned back. He was kind of, but you didn't see that one, did you? But wow, that was out of the blue, Tanya. That was a surprise.
But why isn't it a sacrifice, really?
Yeah, and let's just jump in because it has suddenly exploded, as we mentioned, the position. It looked here like it's just about the structure. White's pawn in the center might advance forward at some point, but at the moment it's isolated. Giri said, I don't care about long-term strategic stuff. I'm going to take this pawn. Bishop takes pawn. Again, full board awareness. And it's not a sacrifice because the bishop can be taken, yet it would lose the knight. This knight would no longer be defended. White's pawn on g2 was the glue, and it was overworked there. So Jan reacting instantly. He did not want to part with his knight, of course, so he castles queenside. Looks like he's crashing through on this pawn right now, but Giri instantly reacts, throws his pawn forward, and still this weird position of the black bishop. Will it come back to haunt Giri? He's won a pawn, but he's won a pawn on a line that opens up the white rook. Harry, the h-pawn's disappeared, but that only opens lines towards the black king.
Yeah, it's a pawn on the side where your king is, and that means more attacking opportunities for white. So I don't even look at it as a pawn blunder by Jan Nepomniachtchi. I think this is full compensation here, and he moves the bishop, hitting that rook. This has to be not the anti-Berlin, but the anti-Est Berlin. I've never seen a more non-Berlin position in my life. I mean, this is just blown up.
Yeah, how often does white castle queenside in the Berlin? It's extremely rare. And to see opposite flank castling an open center, normally the Berlin's very blocked or it goes straight to the endgame. And right now, I like white's chances. I think with the extra time, it's Jan's type of position as well, very dynamic. If the bishop drops back to a bad square, then suddenly we could see, for example, pawn takes pawn. Black should not capture back now because, look, the queen will pounce and it's a double attack. Checkmate is actually threatened on g7. That will be the kiss of death checkmate again. And this bishop also loose. So suddenly the stakes are really high. One error and this could end.
Wow.
Black has to be really accurate to survive.
Wow. And I don't know that much about the Berlin, but I often hear the word boring when I hear Berlin. So if this is very not Berlin-like, must mean we have a really cool game ahead of us now.
It's full entertainment on the board. With the white pieces, we see firstly opposite side castling, and also the fact that white is down a pawn, but so many attacking possibilities against the black king. It's just all about whether Jan Nepomniachtchi will find the time to get his queen to join the attack. And right now, Anish has to save the bishop. So he decides to move it to the square that you were pointing out, the active square, but now he has to be careful. But it looks like Anish has calculated his way through. He immediately stops the threat that you were pointing out, not allowing the queen to join the party on the king side from that g6 square.
Yeah, but if we look at the two kings right now, the white queen, of course, will move out of the attack from black's bishop. But if we compare the kings, here we go, the white queen moving towards that king side. Black has no defenders around. Black's knight is on the wrong flank, wrong side of the board. The knight actually should be a defender. And white's king, meanwhile, there's no attacking pieces around it, so it feels pretty safe. And chaos could be happening on the dark squares here, Tanya.
Big chaos on the dark squares, not only squares for white to jump into, but also notice how those g7, h6 pawns are actually big hooks for sacrifices that could arise at any moment. And I was talking about queen joining the party. It very well is ready for a big party with that square on g3. Queen to g3 doesn't only hit a mate in one, David, but also the idea of that h1 rook then threatening to jump in with rook to h6. Yes, let's show that. And now if you try to defend this mate, there are these ideas of rook from h1 because of the pin on g7. This would be game over. The other rook joins in on the H line, and that's goodbye to the black king. So queen g3 is actually a big threat on the board. And even if I'm not really sure what is the right move here for defense, you can't capture on d5. But let's say, David, you try to get a piece into defending the g7 pawn, either rook to f7 or queen e7, one of these two moves. I think now as well, white can jump in with, you just take the pawn, hit the queen and win. So maybe queen to e7 to demonstrate the point that I want to make here, that you come in with your queen to g3. I'm also threatening bishop to d6 in certain positions. And notice how the black king can't really sidestep a pin. If you go to h8, hey, guess what? You're still under pin. Rook takes h6 would win the game.
Oof, where to hide? Anish now in some serious trouble on the board and the clock. 5 minutes down, facing a blistering attack. And even if there is a narrow path to survival, it's going to be hard to find it with the clock ticking. Huge threat of queen to g3. If we compare the bishops, we talked about opposite color bishops. When you're attacking, when there's major pieces on the board, it's all about who has the initiative. And you just can't defend your dark squares. I think he might need a miracle now, Anish Giri, if he wants to stay alive in this tournament and in the hunt for Toronto.
Wow.
And the clock is ticking down for Anish. He is getting on the 4-minute mark, and the position is just starting to get dangerous for him. To survive this one, he doesn't have to find just one good move. He probably has to find a sequence of good moves, 10 good moves, and with just 4 minutes on the clock, it's incremental pressure, which makes you collapse at some point. This is going to be a tough task, and I think Anish is regretting capturing that H-pawn, opening up that H-line for Jan Nepomniachtchi's rook. What makes the scenario even scarier for Anish is that he's playing a player like Jan.
Yeah. And he's playing with less than 4 minutes now on the clock. You can see it on Anish Giri. He is getting stressed out right now. He knows he cannot lose this game, and it's danger zone right now.
Yeah, and he finds a good defensive move. After a lot of thought, it cost him quite a lot of time there. But now he's aiming to meet the white queen landing on the g-file with the black queen blocking. So he's ready to potentially trade queens. If the queens disappear in this middle game or this position, then he's safe.
Okay.
So I think that's a very clever idea. He's aiming to stem that initiative that we saw earlier. And yeah, I was going to make a joke that actually he wants to take that pawn that he captured with the black bishop a few moves ago. He wants to give it back to Jan. He's saying, close the H-file. Please block your own rook. I shouldn't have taken it because taking pawns open up lines for your opponent's pieces. But this is at least a good defensive move.
It's a super cool defensive move. It was so natural to put the queen on that e7 square, but Anish, of course, this is why they're the best players in the world. He finds, and I think perhaps the only move to keep still chances alive to hold this on. And the idea is simple, that you're going to challenge white's queen on the G line. You want to play the move queen to G6 if white does go ahead with the plans that we've been talking about. Queen E8 is very resourceful by Anish.
Yeah.
So Jan Nepomniachtchi desperately wants to keep the queens on then, I suppose.
Definitely. And I'm expecting him, if he's feeling ambitious, maybe to push, maybe to trade off pawns. And for example, here, to start bringing his pieces into the game, whether that's the white rook, whether that's this white rook. He can enter kind of on the other side of the board with the white queen. He just needs to keep queens on no matter what if he wants an attack. And, OK, he's really calculating something now. Head has gone all the way down. He's disappeared, Jan Nepomniachtchi. But just like a magician's trick, will he be able to conjure something up on the board? It's looking really tense. This does feel like the critical moment. That's why Anish spent so much time on the clock. That's why Jan now is spending time back. He knows that if 2 or 3 moves go in black's favour, there's no more chance. This is the time to strike if he's white. He senses an attack.
And you've got to be sensing an attack in this position. All your pieces are directed towards that black king. You have a really strong central D pawn as well. But Anish, meanwhile, also very, very focused. And I think that's so instructive because you have to use your opponent's time to think and calculate as well in these complicated positions. The trouble is far from over. Anish has navigated correctly for now with this last queen move, but he needs to keep up that precision for the next couple of moves. And that's when it gets more difficult. David, I really like your idea of keeping the D pawn alive. It just feels as if that can be used as another target to get into black's camp. So imagine combining an attack on the king side, and if you can make a move like D6. Is D6 possible? Because for me, it's the most attractive option in the position.
Yeah, it's definitely the most ambitious, the most logical here. Pass pawns are there to be pushed, as we say, and this would create a really nice pass pawn. It's going to paralyze black's pieces long term. It's going to immobilize them. I guess the only downside is that black's knight will be an easy blockader, and it also gains time against this beautiful white bishop. And if you have to start retreating, we talked about it earlier, Kai, you said retreating, is it a bad sign? Now that the center's exploded, yes, it is for both sides. So as soon as white starts going back with his bishop, I'm not even sure where, then suddenly, look at this. It's black with the opposite color bishops crushing through the light squares. And suddenly it's the white king that's going to face a checkmating attack. This is how quickly things can turn if you're just careless for one move, if you have to retreat for one move. And yeah, this pawn push, he wants it. It's desirable, but maybe not quite the right moment for it. I love this, just this idea of getting rid of white's best attacking piece.
One of the most amazing things about chess are these dynamics that exist with opposite color bishops. Everyone just thinks if it's opposite color bishops, the games would usually end in a draw. But actually, if the queens do stay on the board, and as I say, they have come off the board, but when there are attacking possibilities, these are the most dangerous kind of positions because the different color complexes. You just cannot challenge the bishop of your opponent, which means bigger weaknesses on the squares. And even though the pawns are off the board, I think that white bishop on e5, it does have a solid target on that pawn on g7, and Jan is still ambitious about his chances.
Okay. So even if the queens are off, Jan Nepomniachtchi is not giving up winning this game.
Definitely not. And it was all predicated on just one move. If white wasn't able to start attacking, look how active the white rooks have suddenly got. If white was one move slower, then the queens disappearing would have most likely meant a quick draw. But white does have the initiative now. I nearly said initiative again. You've got it in my mind, Tanya. But white just has enough time to start attacking things. White's rook on the 6th rank has some targets, especially black's pawns on the queen side over there. And yeah, the black bishop is the key piece right now, and he's trying to eliminate it. He's trying to kick it away. And you can go for a bishop for knight trade here if you're Anish Giri, but suddenly you're bereft of your best piece, black's light squared bishop, and white's bishop clearly superior to the black knight. You have to be really careful which pieces you keep on the board. Still attacking despite the absence of queens.
Yeah, and I want to say negotiated, but it just doesn't have that same ring to it. But yes, I think he had to give up this bishop for this knight. Not a happy choice, because any other move would probably end up with a big attack on the G line, or you end up losing the C6 pawn. Jan will recapture. And notice how that rook from H4 actually defends a very key square, the C4 square. So black doesn't have the time to jump in with the knight to C4, hitting that rook and the bishop because of that last multi-purpose move by Jan, rook to H4. So that was a really nice touch there. And black just doesn't have enough time to capture on f3. It's a free pawn, but it comes actually at a big hidden cost. And there are all these attacking ideas of white jumping in with the rook, rook to g4. I was also thinking about rook to g6, but rook g4 looks really strong as well, David, because black really can't push the g pawn. The h6 pawn falls anyway.
Yeah, and this would be disaster for the black king, even with queens off the board. White's rooks and bishop combined so nicely. So Anish, he found a way to take this pawn. First, he hit the white bishop. I expected the bishop to drop back. It did indeed. And after rook takes pawn, now at least the black rook will be able to cover the 7th rank. It will cover some holes. And we could well see a race scenario where white takes this pawn at some point. I'm not sure whether now or later. And it will be a case of the black pawn's pushing, but the white pawn's pushing on the opposite flank. And here, the bishop is better when there's pawns on both sides of the board. The black knight is not a happy piece. So I think white still has a practical advantage.
And it's better because it's a long-range piece. So you can not only assist your own pawns on one side of the board, but also stop your opponent's pawns from advancing while the knight finds it difficult to jump around quickly. And this is the key difference with what Anish has done. Getting both rooks into the game, now he has the possibility to drop both of them to the 7th rank to defend g7. So he can start with rook to f7 or the other rook moving forward. And when white doubles up on the g line, doubling down on that pawn, Anish has another defender coming into play.
Yeah, he can just about hold this square, and eventually we will see that situation of white taking a pawn, I'm not sure which one, and the game heading towards that endgame race. Bishop versus knight. That's the key kind of question right now.
It's the eternal question of chess, right? Bishop versus knight.
That's why chess is so rich. I mean, they're worth the same, and in different positions, one is always superior to the other. But yeah, it's so hard to choose. It's a matter of taste. But actually, in certain positions, objectively, one clearly dominates.
There was always this debate about the knight actually being worth 2.5 points and the bishop worth being 3 points. So what do you think of that conspiracy theory?
Yeah, and I was going to ask, will that maybe even happen now with AI, who I think prefers the bishops?
Yeah, especially when they're as a pair. And I remember reading this book. It was like 10 years ago, so before AI really started taking over, but it was about computer chess in general. And it said that even then, computers which were slightly weaker, they gave bishops 3.25 and knights were 3. And I was like, okay, but humans aren't really going to think like that. But I think it was a case of computers ranking them slightly higher. But positions like this, I think that bishop is worth 4 and the knight is only worth 3. Is that type of scenario. Look how strong white's bishop is, anchored by a pawn as well.
And it would be huge, right, if there was sort of a rule change in chess where you did change the point system for the pieces. I mean, the last rule in chess was that en passant.
Probably, yeah.
And that came back in when? Like
1700.
Exactly. The modern rule of chess came 300-400 years ago, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, don't quote me on that. I'm not the best chess historian out there. Someone needs to tell us when was en passant created.
A long time ago.
Before we were born.
Yeah, so if they change this point system, it would be a big deal.
Absolutely. And even if not officially, I think with the computers and AI playing such a big role, I think from a human perspective, we often see that actually in play already. But it all, again, comes down and boils down to the kind of position that we actually have. I mean, in some of them, the knight is just so much more powerful than the bishop. But in this one, I agree with David that that's a big bishop. And that's a small knight.
Oh, big bishop in the center of the board for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Question is, will it give him the victory in this game and in this match, or will we see Armageddon? Do you see chances for Anish to win this game at all?
It feels like a two-result position now. If you look at Black's pawns, they're all separated. It was really interesting that Jan had a choice of which pawn to take. He chose to eliminate Black's h-pawn. White's rook on h6 untouchable because of a pin, and that basically showed that he wants to take risk out of the position. We showed some races where Black had connected pawns, and those are scary once they start marching. I'm expecting Jan here to start retreating some of his rooks, and long-term, Black's isolated pawns, the fact that all of them are lonely without friends, as you called them earlier, Tanya, it means that they will be easy pickings potentially later for those white rooks. And still some counterplay. Black has got everything covered right now. One rook retreats. He's going to push the Black c-pawn to kick away White's bishop. But I do fear still long-term for his chances.
I was hoping for your line there, David. I wanted to see Jan to go for those queenside pawns and to see that race, because it just felt like that was anyone's game, and perhaps the bishop could potentially be stronger than the knight. But look at the way Anish has handled this in the last few moves. We've been talking about a big bishop versus a small knight. That is not a small knight anymore. White's bishop has been thrown back to that g1 square, while Black's knight is the one in the center of the board. It's a kraken, as Peter Swidler would call it, controlling so many key squares.
Yeah, and there's a trick in the position. This big bishop is no longer big. It looks really small and timid here in the corner, but you cannot go and take this pawn. It's not a free pawn. It's a trap. This would allow a knight fork. Suddenly the Black knight, which looked terrible, is the superior piece. And that means if you cannot take this piece, maybe you have to guard against the knight jumping in anyway. This looks like a scary check. The White king not entirely safe. If you, for example, retreat to a bad square, then suddenly this check would be devastating. All sorts of forks in the air. And especially with the clock ticking, you don't want to blunder. But Jan's gone marching with his king.
Oh!
Wow. He started marching his king forward while the Black knight dances to the other side of the board. And we talked about how these were isolated. The White king is going to be the one attacking them. We did not expect this.
It's a bit of a turnaround. Suddenly, it's all of Black's pieces that are so active. And I think it comes down to Jan's decision of grabbing that H-pawn. Look at that, Anish trying to actually build that initiative that we keep bringing up. Right now, if there's a check on the A line, it's check and mate.
If, for example, Black can ever bring a rook up, this would be trapped, this White king. The problem is, at the moment, impossible. White's rook covers the 6th rank. No route in towards it.
7 seconds for Anish.
Oh. And he goes for this trade. I'm not so sure about this one. Pieces off the board. OK, he's backing it up by trying to go for a pincer movement against, whoa, my arrows, against that white pawn, which has just moved off b2. This one is really livening up. It's just a rook endgame, though. No more debate, bishops versus knights. And Anish is just trying to trade off as many pawns as possible, maybe even going for the White king if given an opportunity.
And that's a pawn sacrifice, but one that Jan should be hesitant to take, because that would create so many weakness on the C line that Black's active rooks can start targeting, which is why Jan wants to keep the pawn structure intact. And for now, it's safe. The king is safe. The pawn structure looking good. Once again, I think this one, David, going to end in a draw. Armageddon is coming up, is my prediction.
Do you think so, even with Anish's clock? 9 seconds?
Yeah, I'm less confident.
Really?
I would definitely take White here because you have 2 connected passed pawns. Black has 2 separated pawns. And the absence of both pairs of rooks gives a little bit extra spice, and also the clock. We've seen players, even the best players in the world, collapse under time pressure. And Jan is extremely good at maneuvering these types of positions.
Armageddon, no Armageddon. Kaya, you got to break the tie.
Armageddon. I will say Armageddon. But I am very excited about the next few minutes now, because I can feel the tension for Anish Giri here with 8 seconds, fighting for his life in the tournament and his chances to go to Toronto. 3 seconds for Anish.
3 seconds, and now it's a mutual march of the pawns. Who's going to be quicker in this race? Even the evaluation bar slightly confused there. It's heading up in White's favour, and that's simply because the white pawns are so mobile. They can push. Black's pawn is blockaded, and look at this. Nepomniachtchi's pinning down the black rook on the 7th rank, reminding him he has weaknesses there. It's so hard to play. 5 seconds. It's not much time, and the pawns are rolling.
And it's just so much easier to play with white, right? Your moves are so much easier. Just keep pushing the pawn. Meanwhile, black cannot do anything.
Oh, I think he's just losing. White can continue pushing the pawns. I don't think it's a direct blunder. I think it's just a continuation of small inaccuracies here. But look at this. Jan is just marching forward. The pawns are unstoppable. The white king is coming in.
And the c-pawn definitely has a really good friend with that b-pawn. He can just continue advancing with c6, and black has to find a way to stop it. The king comes in, all forces ready to assist that c-pawn from queening. You can give a check on d7 and continue with c7.
But now a trade of rooks, and white can offer a second trade of rooks. Rook to c4. He's blockaded the vision of the black rook. Now white's c-pawn is going to become a queen. It's guaranteed. And Giri, with no time on his clock, gives a check, a spite check. White has got this in the bag. It's going to be game over any moment. Jan is bobbing his head here.
Anish knows it. Anish knows these are his last few moves in the AI Cup, and it's over.
Wow, dramatic game that decides the fate for Anish Giri. He is knocked out of the AI Cup. Jan Nepomniachtchi makes it through to the losers final to face Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. That's going to start in not too long, and his hope to go to Toronto to play the Champions Chess Tour Finals is alive. It is over for Anish. He will not be going to Toronto. He is knocked out after playing some fantastic chess over the last few days in the tournament. It is over for Anish with only seconds on the clock. He lost game 2 in the losers semi-final. Kind of feel a little bit heartbreak for Anish after playing some fantastic chess over the last few days.
It really was. He just showed phenomenal play against Hikaru, against Alireza, winning 2-0, just a combative play. And even today, the first game, he navigates his way. Second game, almost a draw, has it in his hand, but it all came down to the clock again, where Jan had those extra minutes in a very critical endgame.
Yeah, so close, but those are the margins at this level. Jan, in the end, just better nerves, slightly better speed, and that counted. That was decisive.
And it was a dramatic ending to the game. Let's take a look at it, David.
Yeah, let's show where Jan was able to initiate the grind in the endgame and convert it into the extra point. It was here that Anish's final chance slipped away. He needed to go active with his rooks. Right now, the black rooks are purely passive. He needed to give away the pride and joy of his position. The g-pawn, he needed to move away, hoping that white would capture, because suddenly the black rooks go in and double up on white's asset here, the b-pawn. If this pawn disappears, a draw is guaranteed. Instead, he went passive, putting the black rook on a bad square, and as we saw, Jan started pushing his pawn, and in the final position, this was about to become a new queen.
Wow, and Jan Nepomniachtchi makes it through to the losers final. It's going to start in about 10 minutes, I think, where he will face Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. That's going to be intense as well. The winner of that goes obviously through to tomorrow's grand final. Who do you now hold as a favorite in that one? MVL against Nepo.
It's such a tough call, and both these players, again, entertainment guaranteed for chess fans and for us in the studio. I think we can expect some dramatic moves, even though they're both aggressive, very differently aggressive. While Maxim's attacking play is very calculation-based, we see more intuitive, faster play by Jan Nepomniachtchi. It's going to be a big fight. David, just going back to this match that we just witnessed right now, I also think one of the key moments that Anish will come to regret is grabbing that H-pawn. I think that's where it turned around.
Yeah, sometimes greed isn't good, and Harry the H-pawn, let them stay on the board. Suddenly the initiative turned, and it wasn't just the fact that he struggled to survive on the board, it was the clock. He burnt so much time after making those kind of risky decisions, and Jan, in the end, I think that was part of his plan. He gambited, and it paid off.
Wow. Wow. That was only the first match of today. We do have one big match left today on the losers bracket. It is Jan Nepomniachtchi against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave to decide the losers bracket and who goes through to tomorrow's grand final. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a few minutes.
years, Chess Kit has had lots of fun online events, but it's finally time for us to go IRL, in real life. Puzzle competitions, a main event, and all sorts of other fun things to do. Announcing
the Chess Kid National Festival.
Come along, you'll meet Fun Master Mike there. I'm going to the Chess Kid Festival. I'm going to the Chess Kid Festival. I'm going to the festival.
Fun Master Mike that you saw there is actually the one who taught me that the Queen always wears matching shoes with her dress. And everyone, join us in Charlotte, North Carolina for the first ever Chess Kid National Festival. Book your tickets now for 4 days of chess festivities, including over-the-board tournaments and opportunities to meet special guests like Gotham Chess and Fun Master Mike and also Chief Chess Officer Danny Wrench. The festival takes place February 16th to 19th, and we can't wait to see all of you there. We can't also wait to talk to Anish Giri, unfortunately now knocked out of the AI Cup. How are you, Anish?
Yeah, it was an unfortunate match. I had high hopes. I had some sort of a deja vu because once I remember Magnus, he wanted to meet me in the final. And it was a few years ago. It's the Chess Masters, I think. And in that tournament, I delivered. So I felt, maybe I was destined to get there, but somehow the match was not going well. It was better than my previous match with Jan, but I think I'm very slowly learning from my mistakes. I need to lose a couple of more times to him to get better.
Yeah, how much? After also, hearing Magnus yesterday saying that he really wanted to meet you tomorrow in the grand final. So how much did you want to get there? Also thinking about that ticket to Toronto.
Well, as I already mentioned before, a lot of things had to happen for me to get there. And a few things did happen. In particular, my match with Hikaru, of course, was not something anybody would expect. I think Shahryar is an opponent I can sort of lose to, but beat as well on any day. So I think that is not less of a shocker. But yeah, I had to win against Jan, then against Maxim. And I think since I'm coming from a loser's bracket, I think against Magnus, it would be like a match with some sort of odds. It was really, really far. But speaking of Toronto, there are more events hosted in Toronto the near future, so maybe I'll qualify to some sort of Toronto anyway, so I'll work on that.
Very nice. And Anish, well, you played some really, really good chess over the last few days, especially. What are you the most happy about?
Well, obviously, I'm happy to beat Hikaru because you can count these kind of victories on your hand palm, or how they say that. I haven't beaten him in matches often. I did it, I think, only once before. But, I'm happy to show a good level. I've had sort of unfortunate beginning to the tour this season because one time I qualified to Division 1, I couldn't play it, and the other times I didn't make it to Division 1. And I felt that I should be able to be one of the guys at least once. And here I sort of played all right. But chess players, in particular, after they lose, they can't stop thinking about their last game. So right now, it's kind of really hard to think about what I'm happy with. But surely there are many things I'm happy with in the tournament. Some good games for sure. In particular, making it to Division 1, that's really nice because that wasn't easy. I won my last 4 games in the preliminary, which I was not even expecting or counting on that. I was sort of having my usual kind of qualifier. When it's tough, you play the strong grandmasters, the usuals who are all the time sitting online playing. And when you face these people in like World Blitz or Rapid, it's not so scary. But when you play them online, they're so skilled and so used to the environment that it's hard. But then suddenly I started winning game after game. So that was, I think mostly I'm shocked by the way that I qualified to the Division 1, because this kind of tournament, the knockout, I've played them many times, and I know that if things go my way, I can win a match or two. That's nothing new. But I think qualifying through the Swiss kind of tournament with all these experienced online players, that's something I'm maybe the most proud of in this event.
Yeah. Always a pleasure, Anish, to have you in the tournament and to see you play, and always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And for the upcoming interviews with me, you always got that AI if you need. So
Exactly.
I'm sure
I'll
you'll be
just
fine.
use that, Anish.
Just use that, please, after everything. Okay, thank you.
Relieving you of media duties.
But
Very
I'm
nice.
still getting the pay, right?
Of
My
course.
media fee still.
Of course,
okay,
of
that's
course.
the usual.
Yeah.
Okay, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good deal. Good deal. Very nice, Anish. Thank you for joining us. That's it. Anish Giri is knocked out of the AI Cup, but it continues, you guys. We still have the losers final. It's starting in only a very few minutes. We have to go through the scenarios right now. So Maxim Vachier-Lagrave can still make it to Toronto. He needs to win his losers final match to have any chance. And if he beats Nepomniachtchi, he will need to win the grand final as well. For Jan Nepomniachtchi now, what is the situation? If he wins this, he's in.
He's true. He's already done half the job for the day. He's gone through with his match against Anish. He beats Maxim. It doesn't even matter what happens in the grand final against Magnus tomorrow. He beats Maxim Vachier-Lagrave. Jan Nepomniachtchi is in to Toronto. But for Fedoseev, the other player in Division 2, David, he's rooting for a player in this match.
Yeah, Fedoseev is cheering for MVL right now. The only way Fedoseev can qualify for the tour finals is if MVL beats Jan Nepomniachtchi. So Fedoseev, he's still playing his game. He's in the lead now, but he's got half an eye on this one for sure.
Fedoseev is in Division 2 playing winners final right now. He is in the lead against Vladislav Artemiev. He leads by 1 point. They are now playing game 4, the winner going through to the grand final in Division 2. So Fedoseev is still in the mix, but hoping Nepomniachtchi will lose this match against Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, who played some fantastic chess yesterday in the winners final against Magnus Carlsen. So even if he lost that match against Magnus yesterday, as we see the tail of the tape between these two, it's very equal.
Can you get any closer in a rivalry? Basically the same age, both born in 1990, basically the same Chess.com rapid rating, and deadlocked in their head-to-head scores. That is just incredible. This is literally too hard to call.
So who do you guys hold as the favorites? I'll ask you first, Tanya.
It's such a close match to call, Kaya, and I hope this one goes down to the wire and we get an Armageddon. I'd love to hear what the chat thinks about this. Because both Jan and Maxim have played fantastic chess in the AI Cup. I mean, that match, Maxim versus Magnus, yesterday is one for the history books. And then Jan as well, showing dominating performances in his victories in the elimination bracket. It's going to be a close one. So, yeah, tell us, chat, who do you want to see in Toronto?
Definitely. Will it be Maxim Vachier-Lagrave? Or will it be Jan Nepomniachtchi winning the losers? Finally, Jan Nepomniachtchi coming straight from the losers semi-final with a smile on his face. And who do you hold as the favorite in this match, David?
Oof, this is tough. I don't really want to pick a favorite, but I suspect maybe Nepomniachtchi is feeling more confident. It depends how much yesterday's match against Magnus took out of Vachier-Lagrave. If he can maintain that form, then I'll back him. If the tiredness kicks in, or if that kind of loss in the Armageddon haunts him, then I think Nepomniachtchi might take it riding on a high from beating Giri. But we're off. It's another Petrov defense, and Vachier-Lagrave obviously not taking too many risks here. He's going for a solid variation, popularized by Magnus Carlsen, where the queens come off early. And this is surprising. Queens coming off means we're still in the middle game, just queens disappearing there, but it's going to be slow, it's going to be strategic. There's no fireworks in this one, at least not yet. I think Maxim wants to play with the handbrake on. He doesn't want to take any risk whatsoever.
And remember, everyone, it's best out of only 2 rapid games here on the losers bracket. Only 2 rapid games to decide the losers final. If it is tied, then obviously Armageddon to decide who meets Magnus Carlsen tomorrow in the grand final. And Maxim Vachier-Lagrave, I mean, he must also, it was a very long match against Magnus yesterday, but he played some great chess. Do you think he's feeling confident heading into this, even if he lost the match?
I agree with you. I think there are way more positives from that match than the fact that he actually ended up losing it in that Armageddon where Magnus, because of the result odds, goes through into the grand final. I mean, what a performance it was by Maxim, also coming back in that match after losing game 3, winning a fantastic game against Magnus in game 4. So he's got to be feeling confident about his form throughout this event. Meanwhile, Jan Nepomniachtchi, he sticks to the recipe. He chose the Petrov with the black pieces against Anish, worked to perfection. He's doing the same against Maxime. One important dynamic that I feel right now is that Jan's already in the rhythm of playing today, right? He's played a match against Anish and he's won it. Maxime has just come into it. And David, what do you think? This approach by Maxime to trade off the queens, go into this risk-free endgame, is it just about getting into the rhythm and the flow of the games right now?
I think that's it. And he's also hoping that Jan might be a bit tired. Remember, Jan in the interview yesterday said this week has taken a lot out of him. He's played 2 tournaments within a week. He's gone deep into this one as well. It just seems to be game after game after game. And that works in 2 ways. Either you kind of lose energy at the critical moments or you're in the flow. And for Vachier-Lagrave, yeah, it's an interesting opening choice. Still looks like a usual kind of typical thematic position for this opening, but the absence of queens means it's all about maneuvering right now. And the one thing I will say, Magnus Carlsen popularized this opening. Jan Nepomniachtchi played the Petrov against Magnus, so he's studied this. He's looked at all the details, the ins and outs. He should know how to neutralize White's small initiative here.
And for sure, Maxime would have prepared this as well, knowing that Jan is playing the Petrov and it is his pet opening, that this is something that Maxime was also expecting. Well, we see some rerouting of pieces. It almost feels like a queenless middle game to me because you still have both the rooks on the board. None of the minor pieces have been traded off. Symmetrical pawn structure, but we're going to see a game of maneuvers.
Yeah, a game of maneuvers. And the reason here we say White maybe has a small symbolic advantage, at least, the superior chances, is because this pawn on f3 controls the scope, the jumping squares of this black knight. It doesn't look like much, but it does also mean that White is more flexible to throw pawns forward on the king side. For Black, pushing these pawns would come with more risk. And I'm expecting White now to deal with a threat on this knight, whether that's to retreat the knight or maybe to retreat the other knight to block. And White suddenly will be throwing pawns forward against the black bishops. Look how poorly placed this black knight is. It can never jump, and it might later have to retreat if it wants to reroute towards fresher pastures. Small thing, but from the games of Magnus, I think we've learned that there's enough life here. It's only one set of pieces that have been traded after all. And Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, how will he maneuver? It's not kind of a type of position I associate with him, but at least he knows the plans. He wants to push these pawns. If he gets both of these 2 moves in the near future, White will be better. More space on the king side. That's why after the knight retreats, Jan instantly pushes his pawn to cover the g4 square. No advances on this side of the board. And now I'm pretty sure that he's happy. Nepomniachtchi, he's barely spent a minute on his clock, and he's prevented White's main ideas.
Really nice. Give White one more move, get that g-pawn rolling, and you're talking about a lot of space and flexibility and movement of the pawn structure on the king side. Yeah, not allowing any of that, which just shows his understanding in these Petrov openings, right? He knows exactly what plans to go for and what plans to stop for his opponent. Now, one of the drawback of that last move was that it kind of weakens the g5 square. And Maxime immediately takes advantage of that, develops with the bishop to g5, potentially targeting that knight on f6, threatening a destruction of the black pawn structure, which Jan isn't allowing, falls back with his own knight. And you very interestingly pointed out how the white pawn on f3 takes key squares. I think Jan wants to do the same. Push his own pawn to f6, kick that bishop, take control of the central squares, and also vacate a key square for the king to land on f7 to finish development.
Yeah, we see symmetry in the pawn structure on the queen side. We might very shortly see complete symmetry on the other flank as well. And this game looks like it's fizzling out already. Jan was, again, looking confident as if he was dancing to the music a moment ago. And I think he feels he solved all of his opening problems. And remember, for these World Championship matches where he's training this opening, he will be playing practice games against world-class grandmasters. He will be looking with AI, with top engines, with top computers at the plans, the kind of squares for his pieces. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he knows exactly what's going on right now or if he's seen something similar. And there we go. He moves instantly. He plays the move king to e7, defends his bishop with his king. Because we're headed towards the endgame, because so many pieces are off the board, you can get away with this. I don't recommend it normally because kings in the center can be targeted by queens, rooks, knights. But here, still safe for black. And black's king will actually have a nice parking space, a nice parking lot for that king on the d6 square once the dark squared bishops disappear. Yeah, really accurate play by black, defending everything so far.
Snacking on something, Jan Nepomniachtchi. We also saw Maxime Vachier-Lagrave eating a banana before the game started. So they should feel energetic before this very, very important match, not only in the tournament, but in the fight to go to Toronto. All right, with the white pieces here, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, does he need to win this game with only 2 rapid games in this match?
We saw how dangerous Jan is with the white pieces in his match against Anish. I do feel it's a missed opportunity. And also in the back of your mind, if you fail to even test your opponent when you have white in a 2-game match, suddenly momentum turns. You kind of look at the next game thinking, oh, now I'm going to have to defend as black. My opponent will choose the opening. I'm just playing for the draw. I'm just playing for survival. And kind of your mindset shifts, and not necessarily in a positive way. So I think maybe a missed opportunity. I think this opening choice will be regretted by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
Exactly the storyline of what happened against Anish in the first game, right? We saw the same opening, the Petrov, a different variation by white, but it was the Petrov. Anish didn't get anything with the white pieces. Jan Nepomniachtchi comfortably gets out of the opening, ends in a draw, and then with the white pieces in the next game, takes his chances and crashes through. So it's so far looking so good for Jan, and we see a potential pawn break on the king side. I would be hesitant to trade on g3, because then you see this opening up of the h-line for that white rook, pinning that bishop on h7. And even though the eval bar says that it's still fine for black, it looks uncomfortable. It's something that you voluntarily don't want to go into. There are these threats of the knight jumping from e3 to f5 next.
Yeah, huge threat, suddenly taking advantage of the fact this is pinned. As you mentioned there, Tanya, you cannot take this knight because your rook drops off behind it. And if you can't take it, then you will lose, at the very minimum, a pawn. This would be really uncomfortable. Therefore, Jan does keep the tension. He doesn't get tempted to take. Remember, you don't always have to trade. You don't always have to take what your opponent's offering you. I notice a lot of players, when they're first starting the game, if they see a capture, they play a capture. But often keeping the tension is superior. And he drives back the opponent's knight, first of all. The opponent's knight drops back. And now the key question is, if he's feeling ambitious, he might even push the pawn further down. But this will potentially be a weakness long term. The white knight does have one safe square, and watch out for the pawn stepping forward, the king coming over, and this pawn behind enemy lines might just drop off long term.
It's really awesome what you're pointing out, because if you just take a look at this position all by itself, it's so easy to miss a key detail that Maxime has done in the last few moves, which is provoke Jan to push pawns. And every pawn movement comes with its own set of consequences and potential weaknesses. That knight that's on e1 right now on the analysis board actually started from d3. So it's done a bit of a dance from d3 to f4 to g2 to e1, and potentially will go back to that d3 square.
Should be a Christmas tree in the middle there.
But Gaia, it kind of Christmas would come early if you get this kind of a position, because, and it is on the board. So black taking some committal decisions, which could mean weaknesses later on, 10 moves, 20 moves down the line.
Yeah, I take it back. Jan did everything right until this moment, I feel. This pawn push, again, it's AI approved, it's AlphaZero approved, pushing your pawn as far as possible. But normally that's with queens on the board, or when you're targeting your opponent's king. Here, this could just be, disconnected from the rest of black's army. If all the rooks disappear, there's nothing left to protect this pawn long term. And also, look at what he's done. He's pushed his g-pawn forward, weakening a square next to it. We talk about f5 and how knights will thrive there. And right now, white is threatening to trade off bishops and then pounce with the knight into f5, kicking back the black king. And suddenly things are turning. White's pieces look a bit passive, but they're about to spring to life. Black has lost control over vital squares.
Okay. Big game, big decisions to come for both players. They still have a lot of time on the clock. Remember, we do have a competition for all of you at home today, where you can win David's new book, Grind Like a Grandmaster, signed by both David and Magnus Carlsen. And what you have to do is caption this picture and share your caption on Twitter or X using hashtag #ChessChamps.
And you guys can't use sign like a grandma, because I've already sent my entry with that.
It's very cool. I'm trying to come up with a cool caption. My head's not working today, so I need to see everyone at home. What captions do you have? It's a very cool picture.
It's taking all of my self-restraint right now not to grab my phone, go on Twitter, go on X and check out all of the captions. But we've got to focus on this game. But thanks, everyone. I can't wait to read those.
Yeah, I know. And we will pick a winner by the end of the show to get David's fantastic book based on a Chessable course that you did together with Magnus. And now you have a book out there. It's very cool, David.
That's right. If anyone wants to learn about endgames, I mean, the last game that Nepomniachtchi won against Anish, Giri, it was a bit of a grind. It went from a sharp middle game down to an end game once queens came off, and he kept pushing and pushing. You've got to slowly kind of eke out these mistakes from your opponent and just tiring them out, kind of setting these small traps. It pays off. Magnus does it on a day-to-day basis. I used to do it when I was a more active player, and hopefully people enjoy and learn a little bit along the way.
Yeah. Grinding like a grandmaster. It sounds like that's something you really want to do. If you want to be one of the cool people, you need to grind, right?
Is that life advice or chess advice?
Both, yeah.
But absolutely, Kaya. And we've got the book here, and I've been actually grinding a bit on the side. It's definitely a book to get your hands on if you're serious about chess improvement.
Watch out for Tanya at the Grand Swiss very shortly, winning all these end games, these long end game grinds against her opponents.
Don't reveal her plans.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and David's commentating at that event, and I have strictly told him that he's only allowed to go to my game if I've got a good
If the bar's in Tanya's favour, I'll be watching.
I will be watching as well. How are you feeling about that event, Tanya? Are you nervous going into it, or are you looking forward to playing?
A bit nervous, but I think more excited and more happy to play because it will be my first tournament this whole year.
Yeah.
I haven't been playing, several reasons, mostly personal and health stuff. But I'm looking forward to getting back to the board, and I think it's going to be fun. It's one of the strongest tournaments. Yeah, and David's going to be there, so.
And I think you're going to have a big fan base looking at your games as well, Tanya.
That's pressure, Kaya.
Sorry about that. But David, you've actually said that commentating, as much as you've done over the last few years, actually kind of helped you when you played tournaments. You had some amazing results.
Thank you, Kaya. Yeah, I definitely feel like the pressure's off a bit, and also I talk through the positions in my mind a bit better than I used to, at least when I was a more active player. When I was just focused on playing, it was just a big mess. I think a lot of the top players actually say this. They calculate, but they don't really necessarily explain things to themselves. And now I feel that I've kind of got that extra level where sometimes if I'm confused in a position, which happens quite regularly, then I just talk to myself. I say, okay, like white has a strong bishop on this square, so let's maneuver around. Let's go trade off this bishop. It sounds simplistic. It sounds kind of very basic there, but sometimes chess, you need that. You need that kind of elementary stuff. And yeah, Tanya, I reckon if you play as well as you did at the Olympiad last year, you have a shot. You have a shot.
I'm going to try my best, and hopefully I'll have a good time. And I'm just looking forward to playing. So we'll see what happens. But what you said about David commentating and then having a good performance, it was at the Grand Swiss Isle of Man.
Exactly.
Same tournament.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, exciting stuff.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, there's been a lot of exciting stuff going on in the game as well.
And I see the bar is going slightly up for MVL.
I'm really impressed with what MVL has actually done in the last few moves. You know, David, I've been talking about this night, and everyone watching, you can go on chess.com/events and rewatch the moves that have been played and focus on this knight on d3. The amount of jumps that this knight has done all the way, starting from move 1, David, it went from... yeah, maybe you can highlight the path, but it's jumped around this d3, f4, g2, e1 squares so many times. And along the way, it has provoked Jan Nepomniachtchi to create weaknesses. We're often taken in by tactics and these aggressive attacking games. But this has been a bit of a strategic masterclass by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
Yeah, I'm trying to count how many times he's moved his knights. And both of these two knights have done a lot of work throughout the game. And right now they're sitting pretty in the center of the board. And you talked about the holes. It's mostly this f5 square. The one thing white cannot afford to do right now is to ever retreat because suddenly black would conquer this square. And actually, this bishop would be trapped in the meantime. But right now, as long as the bishop sits pretty, I don't think black has many active plans. For example, white can start bringing rooks towards the center. If black ever trades off on the f5 square, it's only going to backfire. This would be a check. And now white would be able to, for example, step forward with g4. The king would start going towards this pawn. And actually, there's a clear path to win it. For example, if black just makes some random moves, we can come around with the white knight. And now we see why black might be regretting some earlier decisions. This pawn will drop off. Instead, here, Vachier-Lagrave doesn't sit on the position. I'm slightly surprised. Let's show what he did. He took this knight. I said, don't move the bishop. But his idea is very concrete. He jumps in, and suddenly black has to watch out for knight checks here, knight checks here. Those white knights are playing some important roles right now.
Really important role, and that role is going to be very, very important. If black starts pushing that f-pawn all the way down to f5, don't rush with that. More holes created with pawn moves. You give a check on e5, the central square that you're pointing at, and it jumps in further to g6 with a fork on the next move. So f5 was not a possibility. Instead, Jan Nepomniachtchi takes another route, a very good approach there, taking squares in the center. So e5 is under control. And David, I agree with what you said, that did Maxime just rush with that trade, going ahead with that concrete approach? It's reminiscent of what happened against Magnus in game 3, fully in control with the white pieces in an endgame, and then making that move with the pawn to a4, which just gave his opponent enough chances to get out of the pressure.
Yeah, I can see why Maxime was tempted. Remember, he is a mathematician. He loves to calculate, and he foresaw this position. He predicted it coming, and the white rook looks like it's landing on e7. But the problem is, after this knight is tickled and hit here, it has to retreat. There's no time to bring the rook in. Or at least I thought there wasn't, because of this knight move. But suddenly I realized that rook takes pawn is possible. This is Maxime's trick. He's giving up the white knight because he's spotted that at the very end, this is a skewer and the black rook is undefended. Look at this weird scenario where the bishop actually gets in the way of the black rooks protecting each other. Suddenly, rook takes rook and white is winning. So I can understand completely what he's trying to do. And in the game position, maybe this is a threat. Hence why Nepomniachtchi moves his rook up the board. And this is where stylistic things really matter. I mean, a slower positional player like me would have tried to build up slowly, improve all the pieces, go for them, go for the maximum, and then go for the tactics. Maxime, he senses the moment, and then he initiates the forcing play.
And it seems to have worked out this time really well, because this powerful threat of rook e7 definitely got Jan Nepomniachtchi worried. He's decided that when the rook does now land onto e7, you'll have the opportunity to move away with the knight and trade off the very active piece for Maxime. And again, this is a conversation about the eternal debate we seem to be having all day long, knights versus bishops. But I think in this one, for now, the knights are winning.
Oh!
Big knights, small bishop. That black bishop has not much breathing space. It's staring at its own pawn. It's stuck on the back rank. Definitely knights here. Note how the center is blocked as well. That's where knights thrive. They really eclipse bishops.
Great point there. In open positions, general rule of thumbs, bishops are stronger, but if the center is blocked and your bishop doesn't have that long range power, usually knights find it easier to jump around. And we see so many holes in the position for black here that the knights have that power performance coming in, and we see them kind of dominate the whole board. And Maxime, I like this approach. He doesn't rush in, which would allow piece trades, but what he wants is to get his final rook into activity. He wants to move that rook from a1 to the center of the board on e1. Jan uses this opportunity to kick back one of the knights, but that also creates further potential targets long-term in black's pawn structures.
Yeah, and how is black going to unravel? You need to somehow activate the black bishop, activate the black knight. White's rooks, once the one in the corner comes behind the other rook, stacks up, they dominate the open file. It looks like time is of the essence here. You have to be really careful. The bar is roughly in the center, but it could spiral, it could spike up in White's favor if Jan isn't accurate. So I think he needs to spend a lot of these 7 minutes in the next few turns.
I agree with you. He has to be really precise to try to just detangle, unravel, like you're saying, because look at the king side, right? You've got all your pieces on the first and second rank, but none of them are in an active square. You not only have to deal with piece activity, but also all these potential long-term weaknesses with that pawn on h3, which can come under fire. You have to keep that defended at all times. You have to make sure any king-pawn ending, I think, is just lost for black.
If everything gets traded, bishops, knights and rooks, black will lose because this pawn will be an easy target for the white king later. It's too far advanced. And okay, he improves the black king. And now the most logical, the most consistent would be for white's rook to double up. But Maxime says, no, this rook in the corner can actually activate in a different way. And again, this is AlphaZero-esque, very AI-inspired type of move, playing on the flanks. It was computers that really revealed to us that actually rooks in the corner, you can activate them up the board. Doesn't necessarily need to be horizontally. And he's trying to push this pawn forward even further and open this A line to infiltrate behind the black pieces. So black has to block. You cannot afford this to happen. And now the big question is, do you explode open the queen side? Tanya, you mentioned that black's pieces are so passive. And normally that's the signal, that's the trigger for switching attention to the other side of the board. Black has nothing, no influence at all on the queen side. And there we see just below the board, the computer does say a very strong move right now, pawn to b4. While black is distracted with these pieces on the other flank, you switch. And there we go.
Board.
Maxime's working his magic. He's playing so well right now.
This is top-class chess. This is unreal stuff. And what's been amazing about Maxime's play is not only how he's handling dynamic, aggressive, tactical positions, but also these strategic positional maneuvers on the board and this full board awareness of creating play on the king side, but eventually striking on the queen side. And it is all about black's pieces. Even just visually, when you look at this position, you can just tell all of black's army on one side of the board. It's a big sign to try and create a passer on the queen side. I think it would be, to my eyes, it would be a fatal error to actually grab that pawn on b4 because it gives white such a strong passer on a4. If black was to trade a takes b4, you can perhaps take back with... Would you take back with the c pawn, or does that create a weakness on d4? Because my first idea, David, was simply try and create an a pawn passer. By the way, a takes b4 on the board.
Okay, big moments, and the evaluation bar dropped as soon as we put this on the board. That's because this central pawn would be weak. Black's knight comes down to hunt it and actually know what easy way to defend this pawn. So he takes with the other piece. But I think it's more about just opening lines here, Tanya. He doesn't even care, Maxime, now about long-term advantages like passed pawns. He just wants to get at the black king. I said it's an endgame. Queen's off the board. It's never in danger, but the black king is defenseless. No pieces around it. And if white gets one more move to push forward, open up this white rook, it's sneaking behind, and this king could come under fire.
That's grandmaster technique in the endgame right there. You know, not thinking about passers in the moment when you can actually start going for your opponent's king here. You get your rook active, a check on the 7th rank would be absolutely disastrous for white. Imagine if both rooks line up on the 7th rank and you give a checkmate on that d7 square. The king goes to d6 and a rook coming to d7 would be the end of the game.
Yeah, that would spell the end. And how is black getting his pieces out? Look how clumsy they are, just huddled together in a ball. It's as if they're just kind of hanging out on the playground, but the action's really taking place on a football pitch, and they're just not able to join the defense. I think Jan's in big trouble, and this is the type of evaluation we see right now, advantage for white, that could, again, increase in just one move. And okay, pawn to c5. He's trying to force the issue. This is typical Jan Nepomniachtchi. He doesn't want to sit passively. He doesn't want to just slowly defend move by move. He wants to clarify the tension, but evaluation bar says no, Tanya.
Because now I think you can combine both the ideas that we've been talking about, right? Piece activity with an a-pawn passer. c5 striking in the center. If Maxime decides to trade those pawns, d takes c5, you'll have to capture back. Not only do you create further weaknesses in black's pawn structure with the knight, I don't know, do you come back to d3 or maybe to a6? By the way, Maxime takes another decision. But my point was that now you've got the b line to fight for, as well as the a passer moving up the board.
Yeah, this looks really strong. You're coming in via the b file. You've got this huge target, this huge weakness. And this would have been hard to defend. Maxime does play a kind of safer way, less risky way of doing things, but still the same question, how to stop this pawn marching forward. After this pawn marches forward, you carve out this beautiful outpost on c5 for the white knight. Also, the rooks can switch focus, switch attention towards a lone weakness here. But he has to calculate suddenly for the first real time in this game because black has a threat himself.
And I think this is the reason why I felt that he has to take on c5, because of the d4 weakness that Jan now has a clear target on. But Maxime doesn't care about that pawn anymore because it's all about the queen side. And when you have more space, when your pieces are more active, it's always easier for the active side to transfer pieces from one side of the board to the other side of the board. While for Jan Nepomniachtchi to get his army into defense is going to be a tough task.
Yeah, these three bystanders, they're just... still not participating at all, not contributing to the cause. And I think white is just going to win this. Actually, maybe even in the next few moves. Wow. Jan is trying to create some counterplay. Okay, he's taken a pawn on d4. He's trying to bring the black rook in, but it shouldn't be enough. It shouldn't be allowed. White has some scary checks as well. I don't think he's calculating at this point. He's just desperately trying to activate those black forces. But Vachier-Lagrave, he's got this in the bank. If he can stay calm, control his nerves, he's so close.
Wow. What a start that would be for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave to the losers final. He has to win this match and make it to the grand final to have any chances of going to Toronto. And someone else that will be happy right now is Fedoseev, who also needs MVL to win this match. And he also needs to win Division 2. And actually an update on what's happening there in the winners final in Division 2. It's gone down to Armageddon. They tied the match, Artemiev and Fedoseev. So drama in Division 2 as well. Okay.
I just love how Maxime has played this entire endgame. You know, It's really quite a masterpiece showing
Again.
technique here. Yeah, just amazing chess. This last move by Maxime, it just controls everything on the second rank, so he's not rushing with anything, keeps all his trumps in the position. And Jan really trying to get his resources, his pieces active as quickly as he can. Now he's potentially threatening to trade off that knight on g4 and then advance his f-pawn to f5 to open up his own files for the rooks on the board. And David, is he going to be in time to create that counterplay, or can White start marching down the board with the a-pawn?
Yeah, knowing Vachier-Lagrave, that's what he's calculating. Again, he'll always look at the most concrete, the most direct route first, and use that mathematical brain to work out whether he can and whether he will be in time to promote this pawn. If not, then he might just take a timeout. You mentioned that Black's counterplay relies upon taking this knight, getting rid of the strong knight, and I think the safe approach, at least, would be to retreat. Just drop back, say to Black, OK, my king is super safe, no counterplay, and only later will I hit you with this pawn push. But yeah, definitely both going through his mind right now. I think the practical decision as the clock ticks down would be to move the knight away, just to show your idea of the counterplay coming. I don't think you want to face the idea of these black rooks coming for the white king. So he should probably move that knight, but he's clearly got something else on his mind.
I wonder if it's a check on c5, because that's also a really tempting option here to come in with the knight, but the bower doesn't love it. I guess that's because your king just sidesteps to c7, your bishop is defended, and you're hitting the rook, so it doesn't give you enough time to save that kingside knight. Maxime does go with your suggestion, keeping everything under control, not allowing Black any counterplay. Again, really instructive for newer players as well, that when you've got a dominating position, look for ways where you really minimize any counter chances for your opponent.
Okay. Huh. And the rook move has the white bar go up even further.
Yeah, it's actually kind of, it's like role reversal here. Nepomniachtchi had the kind of opposite side of this against Giri in the last game. It's just with a simple plan. You have a pass pawn, you push, 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 and the opponent has no active counterplay. That's how Giri found himself defeated in the previous game, and that's now the shoe that Nepomniachtchi finds himself wearing. He has to retreat his king. This is not kind of positive development for him. At least he's clearing the lines for the black rooks to both blockade White's advanced pawn, but black rooks here will not be happy. Passive rooks often spell trouble.
Push on, baby. That a5 pawn will land on a6, and the knight will jump to c5. This is going from bad to worse, a difficult position for Jan Nepomniachtchi to try and defend. And David, I'm just thinking about the opening we had. It was so symmetrical, right? The Petrov, it started with queen trades and thinking that there's not going to be a fight, not going to be a chance in this one. But Maxime made it happen.
He made it happen, and I think Jan can trace all of these issues now back to that pawn push, pawn to h3, locked up the kingside, and suddenly it's White on the other flank who's in full control. That a6 pawn is going to immobilize his army. White's knights are jumping. Knights over bishops in this game, at least. I think that debate has been settled. And I don't see anything active for Black to do at all. And the clocks are ticking 2 minutes each. It's easier to play with White, as well as being objectively preferable. So this one not looking good. And also, just an update, I did see in that Fedoseev game, he was very close to the draw, but he blundered a piece in one move, so he nearly won that game. He nearly clinched his spot in the grand final. Things are just dramatic everywhere. I think the nerves are really getting to the players because the prizes are so big right now.
It's intense, and clocks are ticking. Nepo down to under 2 minutes. Is there any chance for him to save this game, or is he depending on basically a blunder from Maxime?
I think he needs a bit of a miracle. He's going to need Maxime to go wrong in this one to try to survive it. It's just a full board domination here. That a-pawn on the left side of the board on a6, 2 steps away from queening. Look at that knight on c5. There's pressure on Black's d5 pawn. There's a long-term weakness on the king side, which the h3 pawn. And also, Black doesn't even have an extra pawn for all of these things that are wrong in his position.
Yeah, if you're suffering, you want to have at least some material to suffer for and something to hope for long-term. I just, like you say, Tanya, nothing to hope for long-term. And Jan is normally a quick, instinctive player. He'll bash out the moves. Here, there's just nothing natural to do. It's hanging by a thread. Either your opponent will push the a-pawn to victory, make a new queen, or you'll lose some material, it looks like. And he's leaning back. That's not positive body language.
Under 1 minute now as well. Wow.
Yeah, that will be an issue, as we saw in the previous game with Jan and Giri. The clock will play a factor, especially when it's coming down to a race type of position.
Yeah,
Got that A-pawn.
Our feature chat, a pawn versus all of Nepo's pieces. I think that sums up the position really well.
Good one, Sam.
A pawn or the A-pawn? Yeah, it works in every way right now.
Nice.
It's all about the A-pawn. And, full blockade mode here for Jan. This is kind of desperate measures. That's not a happy move. He'll have been cringing inside playing a move like that one, but what else? There was nothing else to do. And where's the breakthrough? That's all Maxime needs to do. He needs to break the blockade of the black rooks, and then he will win this game. Okay, what to do first? I would want to attack this black knight. Black's knight is the only active piece, so you can harass it, you can kick it away with both white rooks. I think that might be the starting point.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And the rook that I would want to kick it away with is the A2 rook, because I like how the B6 rook not only defends the A6 pawn, but takes control of the 6th rank, where it's such an active piece, attacking the bishop on E6. And he goes with your plan, goes with rook to D2, because it also eyes the D5 pawn behind the knight. And there's no chance for black to retreat with the knight, because that would mean you go into a material deficit. So the only option that Jan had was to counterattack white's knight on C5.
Whoa.
Wow. Why wow?
What a move. This is a really strange one. Normally, a knight never lands on this square. It looks like a fianchetto, a knight on b7, but I think he's about to win the piece. Yeah. I think Nepomniachtchi going to resign. There's a sneaky knight check involved, and now there's going to be tactics to end this game.
Rook c6 on the board, tactics, and it's all based around that knight landing on d8 with a check. And it's about to happen, and I think Maxime will take this game. Jan might fight it out till the end, but it's hopeless.
It's beyond hopeless. 2 knights beat a bishop. We were talking about that debate. Knights or bishops, 2 are better than 1 right now. And white has full control. Also, the black H pawn, that sorry pawn that we've been talking about for ages. It's about to finally drop off. Jan is going to click that resign button.
Wow, it's over for Jan Nepomniachtchi. MVL takes the lead in the losers final with only now 1 rapid game to go. And that's going to be a must-win for Jan Nepomniachtchi. Oh, he's sighing there. The Russian losing this game. That puts pressure on. What a game by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Is this just more of what we saw of MVL yesterday?
It's fantastic. It's more of what we saw of MVL yesterday, especially because of the type of chess that we saw from him. It almost felt like he strategically outplayed Jan.
Wow. Let's take a look at the game, David.
Yeah, and that one exclamation we both had, whoa, because knight to b7 was a beautiful clincher. And it was here we already established white had the advantage, mostly due to the presence of this a-pawn being so far advanced. But the finishing tactic, the finishing flourish was spectacular. He brought his knight to b7. This knight was hit by the black rook. And now the problem is black's knight in the center of the board can no longer stay on a safe square. No matter where it retreats, there will be a nasty knight check to deal with. It tried to retreat to this square, but the knight was instantly removed, and this is based on this double attack. This fork hits the king, hits the rook, and after the dust had cleared, white emerged with an extra piece. Beautiful and efficient technique from Vachier-Lagrave.
Amazing. And if you still have some popcorn left after yesterday's entertainment, go grab it now, because the next game will be must-win for Jan Nepomniachtchi with the white pieces. We'll be right back.
It doesn't look like much, but neither would a Sicilian defense to the untrained eye. This is a performance enhancer. You don't see it. How about now? Manage your air quality, sharpen your performance, change the game with Air Things.
September bots are here, and it's time for a monumental clash. This barbarian might not crush you on the board, but he certainly can crush you with the board. Speaking of crushing, this giant is a living siege tower. Usually found in groups, goblins are fond of sharp, pointy objects and other people's pieces. The battle-hardened Valkyrie might give you a game once she's done arm wrestling a golem. This hog rider and his noble steed might give you a headache or two. Skeletons adore her, foes fear her. You'll need to bring your A game if you want to beat this witch. Yes, that probably is a rabbit up his sleeve, or a huge fireball with your name on it. We hear wizards are pretty good at chess. Not just a killing machine, Pekka loves tiny butterflies. But you're probably not a butterfly, so watch out. The Archer Queen thinks highly of herself, and for good reason. She is a skilled tactician, deadly opponent, and your worst nightmare. Play them all on
Welcome back, everyone. Getting ready here for must-win for Jan Nepomniachtchi. In the losers' final, the winner in the match will go through to the grand final tomorrow. And in this tournament, we are excited to announce that Chess.com is partnering up with the browser maker Opera. We're so thrilled about this collaboration. It is something for chess lovers everywhere. It truly puts the game right at your fingertips, no matter where you are, with this specialized chess browser. And using this chess browser, Opera browser, David is now going to play bullet chess with someone on Chess.com. You won yesterday, David. Are you feeling confident today?
I won yesterday, but I did get a bit lucky. Let's see how it goes. I'm definitely inspired by the play of MVL in this last game. And here you see the beautiful, the slick Opera browser. I've got my Chess.com shortcut here in the corner. I'm going to bring it up. Of course, you can play puzzles. You can do anything here, but I'm going to look for a game. And OK, let's get a game going. Maybe one of our viewers will be online to challenge me.
Yeah.
Let me remember how to do this, and there we go. I've sent a challenge out into the ether, and OK, I'm playing someone over 2,000. In honor of Ivanka, I'm going to play the Caro-Kann. OK, this is bullet. Ooh, I nearly blundered a piece. My opponent's trying to trap my bishop, h4, a very aggressive move. Tanya, what do you make of my opening?
That was a tricky trap right there, and you almost blundered a piece all over again. So David being put under some pressure here, white going all out on the king's side.
We need to get David a new mouse.
We really do. It's not the mouse, though. A bad workman blames his tools, and whoa, I think I've tricked my opponent.
Nice.
An attack now against the queen, against the pawn on c2. I wonder if my opponent's watching this stream right now. OK, that's a check. I'm going to win some material, I believe. And then it's time to get castled before I blunder. And of course, you can go full screen here, but I love this. You can do two things at once. You can hide this from your boss at work. Look, oh, when the boss walks in. And OK, let's jump.
That's a great life hack.
It's a great life hack. Trust me, it's not my first time. And OK, he's trying to attack me. This opponent is tricky. OK, because I'm a grinder. Because in honor of the book, I'm trying to trade the queens. And, OK, my opponent's spending a long time. This one should be winning now. Tanya, how do you believe in my technique at all?
You're grinding this one like a grandmaster, David.
More like a grandma in this one. OK, trading everything off. I'm going to start taking pawns.
Good advice. When you're up material, trade pieces.
Slowly but surely. Oh.
Ooh.
Oh, I could have checkmated that, I think, but... Oh, now, there we go. Thank you for the game.
David won. Beautiful there, using the new chess browser from Opera and also using Opera's AI tool, Aria. We did an interview with Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Maxime, thank you for taking the time to do an interview with Chess.com. I have to tell you, though, we already did the interview with you using Opera's AI engine, Aria. We asked it to answer questions as Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. So are you ready to be confronted with your answers?
Let's see.
Let's see. So the first question was, who is your biggest inspiration? And the answer was, my biggest inspiration in chess has always been the legendary Gary Kasparov.
It's sort of true, but like there are other players that I've been inspired by, and maybe the primary one was Bobby Fischer.
Okay. Then we asked, what is your favorite time control? My favorite time control in chess is the classical time control.
Yes, yeah, I got it wrong. It's not that I dislike classical time control. Although I do believe that very soon is going to be time to actually shorten even the classical time control, but I still would say Blitz is my favorite. Like, it has always been my favorite time control.
And then we asked, what is your favorite opening? And I was eager to see what it answered for you here. The answer was, some openings that I have frequently employed and enjoyed playing include Sicilian defense, the reload